are back getting ready for a third map of the day here at the Rainbow Six NAL. Doa, Jess, Jacob here with you at the desk, and we are going to check out Oxygen versus Parabellum. Oxygen, obviously a team with a deep run at the Charlotte Major and a deep run in the standings for Stage 1. Parabellum, meanwhile, trying, but not quite getting the results that they were hoping for after coming up out of Challenger League. Now, they've made some roster changes, so we'll talk about that in a moment. We'll see, how that affects things. But it seems like just on the surface level, it'd be a net upgrade. What do you think?
That's a good question, because they're replacing two really good players already in their own
solid.
right. So I don't know if I'd call it an upgrade immediately. I think the gun skill is there. The guys that they've picked up are fantastic shots. It's a discipline question that I've got more unknowns that I want solved today.
Would you say it'd be correct in assuming that the gun skill is what they were maybe lacking a little bit of last stage?
Maybe in a sense, because I don't feel like they had that many people who were in a really good mechanical position overall. Right. I feel like their strategy was the thing that they were lacking in the most, though. So I feel like Penguin is the IGL of this Parabellum team, and he's still kind of looking for the tools that he needs to really fulfill his vision of what a championship-winning team in Siege looks like. And I don't really know if he's had that yet, with the exception of maybe the team that went to the Sixth Invitational from 2 years ago, maybe. But right now, it still kind of feels like they're a revolving door of trying to find the right guys.
Yeah, I feel like Parabellum play kind of a dirty, kind of ratty style of Siege at times, and I think to make something like that work, you do need quite a bit of firepower behind you to back it up. So I like Blaz, I like Gunner, I think both of them are strong pickups. I'm a little sad to see Creator's gone, and Wimpy as well, but I think they'll both be back. I think they're good players, and they should see another time in the league.
Which for Wimpy fans, he is on a CL team now after his performance back in Stage 1, so it's not like he wasn't able to find anything. I think Creators is also in the mix to maybe bounce around to a CL team or two as well, if memory serves. So hopefully he'll be able to find a new home, but Wimpy did find LSR in Challenger League, so he'll be playing with them.
There you go. Well, let's talk about their opponents, Oxygen, a little bit now. Oxygen, of course, a team, again, with great stats in Stage number 1. Did very well at the Charlotte Major. A team that really seemed to be sort of like the total package in terms of individual skill, execution. They couldn't quite carry it all the way through the Major, at least, but in NAL, they're certainly coming in strong.
Certainly, and I think that Oxygen, despite the fact that they did fall in the semifinals, it's still semifinals at a Major. I think Oxygen still looked very, very good last stage and relatively consistent. The one issue that I had with Oxygen going into the Major was there were a couple of moments where Newers wasn't stepping up towards the end of that stage, where he wasn't really able to get the kills and get the entries that Oxygen needed him to get. At the Major, though, Newers didn't have any performance issues in the server that we know of. So I really do think that Newers was able to step up big. He was the highest rated North American player at the entire event, and he was consistent. He was always getting positive frags. He went 22 and 10 on entry, which is exactly what he needed to do. Second highest KPR at the event, only behind Shaiko. He's been a player that I think has grown so much on this team, even just from entering the league back at the start of the stage. And I think he's going to keep on growing, keep on getting better for the team.
The interesting thing is that Vertical and Newers actually flipped where they were from Stage 1 going into the Major, because we had performance questions about Newers. Stellar first couple of games, then a pretty sharp fall off. Sometimes it would take a long time for him to get into matches in spite of playing Finka. And then we get to the Major, and Vertical, the Stage 1 MVP, has a way harsher fall off than I think any of us expected, and Newers suddenly becomes like the talk of the town. I feel like Newers somehow got a bit of a buff. He was always a super confident guy who was able to feed off some crowd energy. But if Vertical were to do anything else in that really, really shocking 2-0 loss to Astralis in that semifinal, maybe we see them go further, because suddenly when Vertical was needed the most, he just kind of wasn't there. It was a one-off, one best of 3. It's not to say that OXG are in a bad state by any means, but it was just interesting to observe that switch up between the two.
It's tough. Every player has bad matches once in a while, but you'd never want that to be in the semifinals of a Major. But you know what? It happens, right? But credit to Newers, for being able to step up in that particular situation. I think that's one of the things that we've always applauded Oxygen for the most, is that when one player is kind of down, another player is going to be able to pick up the slack 9 times out of 10, Even players like Dream, who are there kind of in the support role, still able to frag out when the moment demands from time to time.
Exactly, and I don't think you can put the entire Major loss on Vertical's shoulders, but I do agree agree that he didn't have the kind of the star power land performance that maybe a lot of people wanted to see from him. It felt like for Auction, it was maybe just kind of going back to what a lot of teams see, where it's the Finka main that's stealing the show and has really been the top fragger and the top player. Auction were kind of an anomaly in the NAL, that they had their best player kind of off on different roles, playing more of those grenade like operators that he can run around with and try to frag on. So it was interesting that we maybe didn't see Newers being more impactful throughout stage one, but I think it's just a matter of him growing, and maybe as Newers kind of fulfills that role for Auction, we just need to see Vertical step back and give him a little bit more space on the team.
Here's what I see. If this OXG team can channel the Newers that was playing at the Charlotte Major into their normal stage-by-stage best-of-1 play, they will still be my favorites to win wherever the next major is, because they were my favorites to win the last major, and that was in spite of Newers having some inconsistency issues that we were questioning, and Vertical having a star-studded performance behind Dream's backing. So I feel as though if they're able to get that exact same Newers that played at Charlotte, who was like the third best player overall or something, they will be unstoppable going back to international competition, but they've got these 9 best-of-1s to prove if that's still there.
Well, that's, I think, what's really exciting about stage 2 right here in NAL, where like we know there's so many really good teams. The question is which one's going to be able to get that little edge, like rise just that little bit higher than the rest of the teams to make it to either #1 spot in NAL or to just make it to the major and then, take it to the rest of the world, right? Because we're the best region right now.
Exactly. Getting top 4 at the major was easy for Auction. They had to play against Europeans, Brazilians, APAC. Now they're in the big leagues. Now they only have to play against NA teams. That's hard.
Yeah, that's right. Now it gets difficult, right? Now that they're back from the major.
Now the real work
their
begins.
opponents on the other side, Parabellum, would love to make it difficult for them, but they might find it to be a bit of a challenge. They're a team that kind of struggled a bit in stage #1. They couldn't really find an identity per se. I think that was one of the things that kind of stood out to me with Parabellum in the first stage of the NAL this year. But they've made some changes. You can see Blaz and Gunnar coming in to replace Wimpy and Creators as well. And so we'll see. We talked earlier about that gun skill. They needed to kind of like have a little bit more of that. I talked a little bit with our coach VBM. He was saying that part of their stage 2 is finding the role that each player felt the most comfortable in, which again kind of goes back to the identity thing. So to me, this really feels like a team that's still finding itself.
Yeah, and I think that, you talk about Blaz, you talk about Gunnar. I want to focus in on Blaz, I think, first. He gets a ton of hype from the EUL talent, despite being on kind of questionable teams. Last year, he got 8th place in Stage 1, 9th place in Stage 2, and 9th place in Stage 3, which sounds really bad, but in all 3 of those stages, he was top 2 on his team, and the final stage, he finished 93 and 75. And sure, sometimes it can be somewhat simple, looking like the best player on a bad team, and that doesn't always mean that you're an amazing fragger yourself.
Sure.
Razor's been dropped by 2 pro teams in a row, but I think Blaz is different. I think Blaz seriously is one of those players that can hang with the best of them, and maybe just didn't really get the best luck on the teams he was playing on back in Europe.
Last time Blaz played any sort of actual meaningful competition, EUL Stage 3 last year, playing with this heroic squad, 1.13 rating, 93 and 75, played mostly Yana and Aruni, and had some of the most entry engagements of anybody on that old heroic roster. Now granted, that was a French-speaking roster that later became unknights, that was under temper for a while, that had a lot of internal turmoil behind the scenes because of how often they were swapping players out. If there is consistency to be found here and Parabellum are able to utilize his fragging power, this could be a really, really good pickup, especially given, like, for some reason we have some import power whenever someone comes from a European country over to the US. They have a bit of a buff, but at least for right now, we'll have to see if that translates.
And in the GWB charity event, we got to see a little bit of Parabellum, and what we saw was Gunnar was really, really doing well in the defensive half. Blaz was that Gunnar on attack, right?
Yeah.
Blaz was able to run through on Finka, rock the LMG, rack up those kills. Either Blaz or Gunnar were the top fraggers of every single game that they played in that event. So you know that these two are bringing the heat. They have been the top players for Parabellum so far in the limited games that they've played, and I'm hoping we can see that now that they're on the big stage.
We got to talk about the other pickup that this team made too, which is the assistant coach, Smitty, whatever you want to call him. What do you think, Jesse, he's going to bring to the squad?
I mean, I think it's going to be huge just to have somebody behind him, right? I mean, VBM's a great coach. I'm not going to say anything bad about him, but he's just not in the country. He can't be here to stand behind the team, help call tack timeouts. Parabellum, by far, called the fewest amount of tack timeouts last stage out of any team in the league. Now they actually have somebody who's like really dedicated to that on game day to be back there and kind of read the vibes of the squad and call it off when they have to. I mean, that's going to be huge for them.
And, Kirby had a new game came out, so he's busy. He can't be sitting back there either, So there is that to consider as well.
I mean, he's been around the block. That's the thing. Smitty's been in Ape, Wichita Wolves, Aerial Arise. There was a chance he even wasn't going to be doing anything for this stage. He was going to be retired, going to a different job, and then Parabellum saw the opportunity to grab him. So it's awesome that Smitty is going to be behind these guys, because I think timeout calling, they were what? The team that called the least amount of timeouts for all of last stage, because they figured they'd have it down, and they honestly never did. Their ideas were there, post plants were nice, but attacks would fall apart more often than not in a very unsettling way. So just having a backline, like a secondary observer to tell you when something is going wrong, I think is the kind of backbone that Penguin is absolutely going to need. So assuming Smitty doesn't crack under the pressure for the very first time he's ever been on land, then hopefully this PB team should be more solid behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the big mystery, right? Is how are all these pieces going to perform together, right? Because you've got a lot of new things coming in. We'll see how the synergy is. We'll judge it when it's done, I suppose. But for now, it's time to see what map we're going to be playing on. The bands are in, so it's time to see where the action is going to take place.
Yeah, let's read through the first couple of ones off the board. Immediately, Cafe gone. That's what these two teams played in the last stage. It was an 8-6 matchup. Oxygen won it, but I guess they think that's not dominant enough to try to test it again. They're going to take it out immediately. Clubhouse gone. That's going to be Parabellum's permaban through a really, really long time. They don't enjoy this map, and they haven't really played it since CL. Villa and Border off of the board next. Border, another one that Parabellum played in the very first game of the NAL. Lost 7-5 to Beast Coast. It's been pretty solid. Same score win for Oxygen earlier back in stage 1. And then Chalet Skyscraper. Skyscraper PB have never played. Oxygen played it quite a bit at the major. And looking at Chalet, that's another one that we've seen Oxygen really, really struggle on. 1 in 5 through stages 2 and 3 last year. Permabanned all of SI. Brought it back last stage against Astralis and managed to win. But other than that, it's been really rough for them.
So it's just Oregon Bank and Theme left as these last 3, 2 of which happen to be Parabellum permabans, funnily enough. So they are hopefully going to take both of these out, but if they don't, OXG could sway things towards a different one. But luckily for PB, they'll be the ones to take Bank off the board after OXG ban Oregon. Both of those were the permabans, and we head to Theme Park. This is a much more neutral playing field for both squads. OXG played it one time last stage and won it. Parabellum played it one time last stage and lost it without winning a single attack round. That's the pivotal point for Parabellum. If they can get a Theme Park attack, they should be looking a lot better, but that's the baseline to understanding how this map is played, and so far they have yet to demonstrate that they know how this is meant to be going down.
I don't think Parabellum did great in this map ban phase. To be totally honest with you, they end up on Theme Park. I would say Oxygen Esports are North America's best Theme Park team. They're 3-0, undefeated since Theme Park's reintroduction. 2 wins over each of their group members at the major, and then a third over the world champs here back in Vegas. I'm really, really worried for Parabellum. As you mentioned, only one game, 7-3 loss to Astralis. It's not been a strong one for them, but I assume they've been practicing in the offseason, so maybe they've got the strats prepared. We'll see.
I mean, PB throwing the gauntlet, right? They're like, hey, you know, we're going to take you to your best map. That's how we want to start this stage. Like, I
don't know, man.
You know, I'm sure it was totally intentional. You know, it's.
I mean, it likely was. They likely knew it was an option.
Penguin's brain works in very weird ways. So, I mean, if they like this, then sure, but not much they tried last stage worked for them either. So, I don't know what to say here.
You want to face your opponent in the most difficult circumstances. That is the true test. That is what a true competitor
You sound like my
does.
dad when he said he wanted me to take the garbage out to build character.
That's right. Hey, and you grew up big and strong, didn't you? Because you carried those big garbage bags.
Yeah, that's true. It wasn't because of the garbage.
I didn't.
There you go.
That's what I am. I'm the garbage.
It's a mountain of muscles over here. Well, let's move on to predictions and see what our analysts and casters have to say about who they think is going to win. I feel like I kind of know what way this is going to go. But let's send it over to Blue and Stokes anyway to get their take on it. Are we just OXG here, or do you think Parabellum has a chance?
Yeah. Yes, Oxygen over here on this bench, though. I'm sorry to disappoint, but I don't think it's going to be changing up too much. Oxygen after Charlotte, I think they were looking really solid, so I don't think too much is going to change here. Parabellum obviously having some fresh faces, but I really don't think that's going to change up too much either. We got to see them a little bit with Gamers Without Borders, but they had some signs of life, but I don't think those signs of life are going to do anything against a team like Oxygen.
It's pretty much the same for me as well. I think Oxygen has a really good thing going right now, especially after their run at the major, and I really agree with Jesse's point that he made during the map ban phase as well. I think this was a little bit of a misplay for Parabellum ending up on Theme Park for this one. I feel like Oxygen's going to have a lot of freedom, especially on the defensive side because of the prominence of their roam game. So because of that reason alone, I feel like Oxygen's going to take this one quite handily.
Honestly, like he was kind of light in the way that he put it. I feel like OXG backed Parabellum into a corner with this thing. Just the way that they executed on those first couple of bans. Dude, I'm echoing what these boys said. It's an OXG map all the way, unless Parabellum have something crazy cooked up behind the scenes with these two new guys on the team. I just don't see it happening. So,
well, that's 3 already for Oxygen. Jesse.
Yeah, I already bet against a top 4 major team once today, and I got burned. So not going to make that mistake twice. We're going to auction.
Yeah. All right, quick and simple. Let's see what the coin with the force of random chance has to say. Will it be Oxygen, or will it be perhaps a Parabellum? Now, I believe the coin did predict a Parabellum upset last stage, so there is
I'm not keeping track of that stuff.
Find out. It's saying tails. Oxygen. The coin.
Yeah.
All
right.
Stats this time around. It
Jumping
must
on the
major
bandwagon,
too.
whatever.
It wasn't there.
Man.
It was watching from home. So there you go. Let's see what the fan poll has to say with that as well. The fans are going to also say Oxygen, I believe. Yep. That's correct. And Stokes as well. It's not an interview. He picked Oxygen. So Oxygen across the board, the multitudes, the casters, the analysts, the inanimate object. It is all Oxygen so far. So Parabellum with a lot to prove. Let's see what the community poll is. So you have a question to think about as we go into this break here. Who's a hotter new gunner? Gunner or Newers?
Is that,
well,
what are
interpret
we basing
that
this
how
on?
you will. It's up to you. You decide. You have the power.
I'd take Newers on a date.
Well, there you go. On that note, we're going on a break. I almost said we're going on a date. We're not going on a date. We're just going to go sit and watch those games. They're going to cast it. You're going to watch it. Don't go anywhere. NAL returns in just a few. Messing me up.
Swimming in your water, but it feels just like the ocean. I can't lie, I've really been addicted to you. All of my attention I've been giving to you. Caught up in my feelings, I got feelings for you. Caught up in my feelings, I got feelings for you. On my mind, I can't lie. On my mind, I can't lie. Hold you down till you dry. Hold you down till you dry. All the time, he's my mind. All the time, he's my mind. I know that you're dangerous, I'm addicted to you. I was sipping more for 2 years straight to the face. Champagne belly bubble still won't go away. Last year my best man hit a stain with bad face. Now he's got a LB on the water's cold case. I wake up with pain sometime and never go away. Wonder why I bow to my knees when I pray. In my city gritty, gotta keep it on your waist. Or you might be a victim, they'll find you DOA. I can't lie, I've really been addicted to you. All of my attention I've been giving to you. Caught up in my feelings, I got feelings for you. Caught up in my feelings, I got feelings for you. On my mind, I can't lie. On my mind, I can't lie. Hold you down till you dry. Hold you down till you dry. All the time, he's my mind. All the time, he's my mind. I know that you're dangerous, I'm addicted to you.
But he's gunned down by Creators, or Bolo is rather. Creators drops a massive 3K for Parabellum.
I would evaluate our performance throughout the first stage of the season. We could have done better. There were some close games, obviously, against some really good teams. So we're working on the small issues so we can be more competitive for stage 2.
You know, I think like a lot of pieces are coming together. More and more pieces are coming together to complete the puzzle. So we're okay with these losses as long as like we're playing better every week.
Everyone's like pretty on par, gunfight wise, like gun skill wise. I think it comes down a lot from comms. So we have to better this. We just gotta be aware of it and make sure our comms are better for next stage. It's gonna help a lot because I'd say it's like probably like 70% of what goes in game, calming with your teammates.
We've made progress and fixed issues for every single week. And obviously, as time goes on, we're still going to like be improving and changing how we play.
The bar I'm setting for ourselves for Parabellum next stage, it's always to make a major. So like top 4 is what we want. Obviously, everyone wants to finish first, but top 4 is like a really good, I'd say like bar to put for us.
Thank you for the support that everyone's given us. Bear with us as we're putting the pieces together. We are still learning and building as a team. Stay with us. I'm pretty sure like by the time stage 2, stage 3 rolls around, we'll be a scary team in the NAL to work with.
And
there you hear it, ladies and gentlemen, from Parabellum themselves here. Stick with us as we're continuing to build up our roster and our performances throughout the stages here, looking to try and aim for 4th place, it looks like, inside of this stage. We'll see if they're going to be able to do that, as they've got a matchup today teed up versus one of the brightest stars in North America right now. That is Oxygen Esports on the other end of it. Stokes, as usual, is going to be my co-commentator. It's a pleasure for us here being back once again for Stage 2. Stokes, let's get your opening thoughts on this matchup now after hearing what Parabellum had to say there a few seconds ago.
You know, Parabellum's had some time to work on the roster, John. They've also switched out 2 people. Obviously, Gunnar coming in, and we finally get to see some more, action from Blaz, which is going to be super, super exciting. But as we talked about, walking into Theme Park, I don't think that this is necessarily going to be the best showcase for Parabellum to kind of flex those skills and show us what they have been working on. But, I mean, they could be proving us to be naysayers here inside of this matchup as well. It is a ban phase. It works both ways. They had to let that map through, and is where we ended up. So maybe they have some special sauce for us on the back end, but it's hard to say. As for Oxygen, though, I mean, they've looked right as rain. They had kind of a, slow end there to Charlotte, I would say. They definitely expected more out of themselves, but I think the team overall is in a very solid state, and, some of the players really just needed some of that, LAN action, getting out there in front of a crowd and playing and having that experience before coming back and trying to do it yet again here in Stage 2.
I think up until that final match, though, they did pretty much flawlessly inside of their major run there.
Newers especially, very impressive play throughout the first group stage.
Ultimately, I think they just had a bad match day on their final match and kind of got outplayed there, so I don't think that's any indication to the team, suddenly we got to start talking negatives to the team. I think they still had a very positive event. Meanwhile, for Parabellum, as Jesse mentioned during the analysis test, I mean, we did get to see a little bit of them during the Gamers Without Borders event, where they were able to play 2nd in the North American qualifier. So already seeing a few results come out from that, and specifically we saw the power that some of these new players will bring to the table. Specifically, I was really impressed with what we saw out of Gunnar inside of that weekend of play, so I'm very curious to see if that's going to be able to carry through here now into the NAL when they're up against this consistent competition of teams like Oxygen and obviously the rest of the league as well.
Yeah, and Gunnar had some pretty big shoes to fill coming into Parabellum as well. Creators is no slouch of a player, but as you said, he's been, showing his goods and showing his merit and showing what he can do with this roster. So it's going to be quite exciting to see what they can try and get over on Oxygen, a team that has been firing on all cylinders when it comes to North America and trying to do it yet again here for Stage 2. It all starts today, obviously, as we have quite a few weeks yet to come with the rest of this stage.
Talk about some consistent performers, specifically over on the side of Oxygen. One player we really have to give a lot of credit to, not just for this most recent stage, but even going back to Stage 3 of the previous year, it's got to be Vertical. That incredible play that's been coming out from him. He's been just a consistent rock for almost 6 to 8 months now, and has really been one of the top players in this league to consistently look at to pick up those frags. This is alongside the normal power we get out of players like Laxing, Nurs, Foxe. The entirety of this roster is surely something to be respected, and we will see if the disrespect pick from Parabellum to take it to essentially Oxygen's home map is going to work out. As we go live, ladies and gentlemen, with our 3rd match of the day. Time to see if Parabellum can give us a surprise or if Oxygen is going to bring it home with a quick victory of their own.
And we're going to start things out with the Finka ban Thatcher real quickly. Follow Finka making so much sense with the current meta. She's so incredibly strong with the ability to pick people up across the map. So looks like Foxe already getting into the action with Parabellum. And yeah, you know what I mean? Taking away those LMG is always going to be quite important for the offense. Just that overabundance of ammo making things a little too difficult when it comes to the defenders, especially when it comes to the damage model of those SMGs. Thatcher and Valkyrie making quite a bit of sense for Parabellum. Very straightforward bans here for Theme Park, and Oxygen are going to round it out with Mira, which also means that we have a zombie in play for the defense.
A little bit of extra info there, too, about how the Parabellum roster is being lined up for this one, as it looks like Kool-Aid was going to be kind of on entry duties for this one instead, but that may flip up a little bit now because of the bans and the way that they've played out. We'll see when we get ourselves into the game, of course. Initial picks are coming out for both squads here. No surprise we get an immediate zombie lock as well from OXG. It's actually going to get transferred over to Laxing, but that's going to remain probably a consistent mainstay. For those who are not already aware, of course, the quarantine period has now been removed, so not only do we get a zombie, of course, from the previous patch, but I believe as long as our land client is up to date enough, Sense should be enabled too.
Yes, indeed. At least from what you and I are aware of, Sense indeed should be enabled. But we haven't seen them yet today, so we'll see if we can potentially see Sense down the line. But as of right now, we'll just have a zombie in play. Newers was looking at it initially, but handed over to Laxing. Now, a zombie on a map like Theme Park is going to be quite problematic for the offense. There's quite a few angles that you can abuse across the board, and I mean, it's even sometimes the defense setting them up with angles like waiting room into cache and stuff like that. But since Azami makes it to where you have to give up an explosive or punch her utility in order to destroy it. It's a little bit harder fought for the offense to try and clear out a lot of these angles that could be quite potent if they're able to grasp a hold of them, but we'll have to see how this is going to go back and forth. You and I actually only getting to experience a little bit of Azami when you and I were casting the initial stages of Gamers Without Borders, so it's going to be fun to see it here with all the pro players in play, see what they can potentially produce with this operator.
Oxygen going to have so much freedom to play into it here. We can see Vertical just inching his way out the door. Actually surprised doesn't tag him to go that far, but not only does he find impact, another member of the team, Newers, also able to take an initial gunfight and win it. That's knocked out the Lion as well as the Hibana, so massive impact already being made in terms of what Oxygen have now removed from the utility pool just within the first 30 seconds of play of this game.
I mean, for all intents and purposes, this round is practically already over. Your hard breach is dead. You don't have any secondary hard breach. It's a bunk defense. You're trying to cross things. You're going to have to try and funnel for a lot of this. And if they have initiation more than likely reinforced, then you're going to have to try and push in through waiting room. And that's one of the easiest areas to try and fight back from. But fortunately, Penguin and the rest of Parabellum are going to be able to find a pick here. Actually on the other end of waiting, just through that double door there that allowed them to take control of the hallway just long enough to find that pick. But fortunately enough for Oxygen, they've already gotten so much done inside of the early game. They don't have to worry about it too much just yet, but laxing. A little bit of a misplay there for just a second, and so many bullets inside of this LMG. Penguin will be able to equalize.
Penguin, some really good capitalization on excellent timing right now, catching not only the first member of the team from XG to go down, Newers, but also laxing both as well, catching the players either completely unaware of the situation or in the middle of deploying utilities. So excellently done here from Parabellum to make up the difference. Still with a decent amount of time to play into here as well, with a little over a minute to go. So they've more than made up for the 2 losses initially. Just going to be at a deficit of utility out they'll have to make up for primarily.
And just still remember that hard breach lacking for Parabellum. They got the pick, so they have been able to equalize, so they'll be able to play out trades a little bit differently now in this situation. But past that, Oxygen still with a great opportunity, and more than likely, the ability to know where these drops will be coming from. A smoke will go down as Penguin's Candelo will be caught up by the Wamai disc. Vertical still trying to occupy the space here in Cafe. Might be able to get this kill. Foxy will help out to try and help him, but he didn't need it in the first place. Karatos out now, and he'll be able to pick that one up as well. Vertical with a triple on the round, and Oxygen with some fantastic plays here for round 1.
We talked about it at the beginning of the game, Vertical being a rock for this team. That's literally what he was in this round. Just planted himself right outside or right inside of the cafe door and refused to move throughout the entirety of that round. His position ultimately stops the push that Parabellum are trying to go for here in the final seconds of the round and allows them to close out on a very nice 3v3 here. Beautifully played by Oxygen right from the beginning to the very end. A few players overextending a bit and getting caught on some timing plays, but other than that, they shut it down without too much of an issue.
As for Parabellum, I mean, patience is a virtue here. They got to take their time and break down this map and have an understanding that's clean cut of where Oxygen's positioning is going to be. That's how they get so punished inside of that last round. 2 big pickups, and it's all because they just lack any intel as to where the positions of these Oxygen members are. They're just going about it willy-nilly. This is a live game. This is no longer a scrim. We're not going to sit inside this building and just allow you to take control. In fact, we're going to go peek cafeteria door and do a bunch of weird things that could potentially get us some frags. And really, like, you and I were actually having this conversation earlier on the couch inside of the green room. That's how Siege goes. It's like almost the perfect play style is a Diamond's mechanics, but also a Gold's mentality, where you're willing to risk a lot of things, but you have the ability to do so.
Yeah. So we'll see how Parabellum will now adjust to that. More than likely going to have to slow things down just because of the pace of play that XG bring to the table in round 1. They're going to know, of course, having played Oxygen, I'm sure, many times before this, that this is kind of their game, however, so we might still see a little bit of aggression coming out from them. Either way, we're going to continue to see Azami utilized. Now in the hands of Newers, however, as he tries to move out here and shoot out from the bottom, even has a ping to assist him, but there is an immediate response from Parabellum that sends Newers packing right back into his previous angle. Watching out more than anything for that control hatch drop, which is why you've seen him place that barrier down to block it off.
Always a smart start for the player around Dragon as well. That pre-fire actually tags up anybody running out of bumper cars if they go for the immediate commitment. Past that, though, looks like we're going to have some aggressive looks around the map here for Oxygen. Vertical currently on the back break room kitchen area. Not able to find too much just yet. Parabellum taking their time this time around, so adhering to the signs that Oxygen gave them in round 1. This could cause Oxygen to try and go more towards the fringes of the map and potentially make some errors of their own as they go fishing, but only a minute off the board as Oxygen continue to roll around this map. We have quite the concentration of Oxygen bodies here towards Arcade Stairs. Lots of drone games still to be played out for Parabellum as well, as they're only lacking 3 at the current moment. They've gathered control of the top of Arcade Arcade, and they have air jabs to lock this up as well. But obviously, since Oxygen is downstairs inside of Throne, they should be able to take their time. But unfortunately for Vertical, he doesn't have a lot more of that, as Penguin will be able to bear down on his position here inside of Bunk and find the first kill of round 2.
Vertical was the permanent extension, I'm pretty sure, so somewhat expected for him to eventually go down. Just unfortunate for his sake that he's not able to at least take one player with him or push it towards a later point in the round. Thankfully for the members of Oxygen, they're going to be playing into Throne Room, so this is still manageable inside of a 4v5. But fortunately, Sky is going to continue to fall above them here as they've been given complete control with the elimination of Vertical, meaning that Sledge is free to open up as much room as possible. The good news, though, of course, is he'll be limited with how much he can open up, especially as he works his way over towards the Throne Room area. A lot of utility being dumped in, but no actual execute coming out just yet for Parabellum, and now OXG are considering trying to get aggressive. As you see there from Fox's swing, does not pan out though. Gunnar is ready and waiting for that potential peak, but he's not able to make impact with his bullets, so all it does is give Foxy the warning that he probably doesn't want to make that push again. He'll fall back into the site. Dream will immediately get a double kill as the entry attempt is started by Parabellum. Blaz will exchange it one back to be able to knock out Laxing, locking us into an even fight, but Foxy re-equalizes things for the Oxygen roster as they push it into their favor. Dream gets his third on the round, and well, yes, Gunnar will trade him out. He's also at 50 HP with a 1v2 to go. 30 seconds, and not a lack for time with this flank from Foxy. More than likely will shut it down. Won't even be needed, though, as Norz gets the job done instead. And OXG lock in a 2-0 advantage.
Oxygen cool as a cucumber. I mean, really not too much going on around the map for Parabellum. They do take their time and get their pick, but they're not really able to abuse the map control in any convincing way because of the way that the entry game goes for the actual site. They're constantly walking into this Alda, and Dream's getting away with too much there at the back of Throne. They have no utility to try and deal with this position, and obviously they weren't able to pop any of the walls on the back end of the site, and that's what makes that Throne position so very strong. If you can't dislodge that member by opening up one of the walls, or at least opening up the top and tossing some nades while you're going for the execution or something along those lines, then you're more than likely going to run into a roadblock just like this, and Parabellum hit that wall extremely hard. Oxygen now up 2-0 after they've just set the cruise control, seeing if they can potentially pick up their third round.
Curious as to what the drone economy was like once they managed to take full top control as well, because it kind of seemed like their nades, unfortunately, and just the overall utility amount that was being thrown in by them didn't really end up in a correct placement. It just seemed like it was kind of almost being randomly thrown down into the site in hopes it would meet a target. So I'm curious to see if they were at a lack for drones or just didn't feel like they had enough time to properly drone out Throner and be able to use that a little bit more efficiently. As I feel like that would have helped out to easy up the entry game a little bit more at a minimum.
I didn't track it the best going into the late round, but we had the initial read, which was that they dedicated 3 drones early that got destroyed once they got control of Arcade. So more than likely, I mean, once they go for that execution, they're probably down in the depths of like 3 drones, and more than likely some of those are dedicated to stairwells or exits just to make sure that they know what's going on around the site. So as you said, it was more than likely just a lack of information going into the dying moments there. So pretty unfortunate for Parabellum. We'll see if they'll be able to right their wrongs. But as we can already see, this is starting to dwindle for the drones quite quickly. Already 2 drones off the board. Parabellum not even close to getting into this building just yet, as Newers is continually adding more layers onto this dragon side of Theme.
Playing in its current position, though, he's literally going to have his head on a swivel, as you can kind of already see, as there's so many different positions where he could be entried on from, so he needs to be very, very careful of that. Laxing as well will notice a barricade. He also hears, I think, a shot to his right, so cancels it real quick as he was about to place it down. Blaz with a potential ace nade being primed here, but I believe the wall banks it just a little bit too far off of Newers' position, so we'll be able to continue to maintain the cash hallway spot.
Back and forth we dance here on Cash Balcony. It's a slow waltz, but Newers will get tagged up. Flat-footed here as Blaz tries to nade in, but I believe it's going to go wide. It will indeed. Newers with a very smart reposition here, playing the timing out perfectly. That'll be able to hold up the door for some time, but unfortunately enough, since he didn't attach it to a solid surface, it'll just break right when the door breaks, exactly like a Goyo canister would. Penguin trying to entry up the side. Now, what a shot from him. Immediate reaction. First bullet to the dome of Newers, and they found their opener. Unfortunately, though, no Finka this time since the bans came through. Penguin will not be allowed to heal up.
Beautiful snapshot onto Newers, quickly knocks him out. Unfortunately, as you said, damage being traded out pretty heftily, so Penguin really not going to be in a good spot to continue fighting out here, and definitely won't be able to entry if they want to keep those Candelas in check for the execute. Coming down to the last minute as well, so a much slower approach to things. Just to check in on it, as we missed in the last round, Parabellum getting a little bit desperate on the drone economy here with only 3 remaining at this phase of the round, and as well now losing their first player. Great exchange, though, from Blaz as he ducks under vertical spray, takes him down, and gets himself in the rest of his team free access to the office.
Another Parabellum player, though, trying to move towards the backside for Arcade Balcony. Foxay thought he had the read, but he's got to worry about multiple bodies in the areas. They've taken control of Office, trying to manage top yellow as well, but this split is obviously going to make things quite awkward. Blaz now working his way into the Office vault. Dancing back and forth here, has quite the angle here for yellow, but he'll get taken down from Drain, who's now clambering up the stairwell. It's a 2v3, but they have the post plant now. Kool-Aid now holding the cross here for the top of yellow. He's going to continue to try and hold this down as Eska will be able to pick up Dream and make this a 2 versus 2. It's a slow burn, but it seems like a Parabellum round as it's all down to Foxay. Big kill for him. Can he win the second? Has the information, and Kool-Aid gets it with the bearing. Parabellum get their first round of the stage.
The Insight presence inside of Office is just far too much for Oxygen to play out against Dream. Attempts to do a good job with baiting his teammate a little bit there at the top of yellow stairs, but he gets the job done to be able to pick up another double kill on the site defense. Gotta give credit to him for remaining consistent inside of these tight situations, but just not enough of an effort being put forward there. Kool-Aid maintains too strong of a spot, as you see here inside of the closet, and as a result of that, Parabellum are finally able to get that attacking round that they so desperately needed here, if you were listening to our analysis test segment earlier.
Kind of got to give Oxygen the benefit of the doubt on that one as well. I mean, it is Initiation Office at the end of the day, probably the least favorable defensive site when it comes to theme park, and they did indeed pick it as their tertiary site. So more than likely, obviously having faith in their setup, but also recognizing that it could go awry, and that's exactly what happened. So Parabellum able to pick up a round. If we continue this on, obviously the split will be 4-2, but we'll have to see if Parabellum have anything to say about that. And speaking of what they have to say, not too much of a change up inside of their operator pool. Esk, I do believe, bringing the Sledge back in, though. We haven't been seeing that one as of recent, but we will have Penguin back on the Ying. More than likely not as aggressive on the entry, I would assume, but that was more of a sneaky play just to try and catch Newers off guard. It just so happened that Newers was ready for the Dragon push, but fortunately enough, Penguin had the ability to take him out in the opening blood.
So early roam game here from Oxygen, starting to run into a few problems. Positionally, yes, they're able to waste out a good amount of time. However, I'm just going to shut up as Nurs immediately makes up for all of those problems I was about to mention. Kool-Aid goes down, as does the Case, meaning the secondary Dragon entry is going to have to go back and pick that up. Just slowing things down here for Parabellum on top of, once again, knocking out the only hard breach I believe they have here. And indeed, that is the case right at the beginning of the round.
It's honestly very awkward for Parabellum. You know, after that initial pick there from Vertical, you'd assume that they would have an understanding that they're more than likely going to be going for these things, but it just doesn't seem like Parabellum understands that their repels have consequences. I mean, past that, Parabellum isn't bringing any overabundance of utility. I mean, they're bringing, 4 grenades. They've got some stuns on board with Gunner as well as Penguin, and obviously the ability to hold down the site. But you know what's more important than all that utility when it comes to the site, John? Hard breach. Yeah, and by quite the margin as well. You have to be able to get these walls open to be able to try and put any pressure on this defense. I mean, look at Blaz's position right here. Wouldn't it be great if he could open up the Office wall? But they can't, because they only brought Habana, so now he has to try and work his way through Bathroom with Foxay in an SMG-11 in close range. It just overly complicates things. I don't know why Parabellum's putting themselves in this situation. Foxay, please turn around. So Foxay, Fox! Oh my God, Blaz, no! No, it's the first day, Blaz! You can't have that happen. Penguin will luckily get the refrag, but the damage has already been done. And, I mean, World Star, they'll be looking for that clip momentarily.
Bit of a clown fiesta going on with that play right there, but things continue to devolve as Newers has now fallen back a bit more towards the dorms and is able to pick up that exchange against Penguin. 3 down for Parabellum, only 2 knocked out for Oxygen here, and as well, Gunner at least still outside of the building, only just now making his entry, which will be heard, of course, due to the motion detector. Eska going to try to reposition from somewhere else in the building. We should mention that the Case has now been dropped for a second time in this round too, so someone will have to go over towards top yellow, I believe is where it's at right now, and pick that up for the team here. Newers ready to strike against the Lion play from Gunners. He doesn't expect it, tries to flick over towards it, but it's way too late, so it's an easy pickup for Newers, leaving only one alive here for Parabellum. Eska versus the world in a 1v3, trying to make the entry, has been able to retrieve the Case, but he's only got 30 seconds to play it out. Not to mention he's still wait for this Toxic Wave to fade. Thankfully, it's the only one that Dream had, so he won't be able to bring out another one, but as you can see, this is just such a tough fight to bargain for a win inside of, XG will immediately resume control after that momentary bump in the road on the previous round.
Problem after problem for Parabellum. Now, they're fixable, but they really need to make an adjustment in this offensive lineup. If you want to continue to try and take these fights, where the big thing is not have information on where these early positions are for Oxygen, then you're more than likely going to want to bring more than one hard breach, whether it be secondary hard breach or whatever, but you have to have that utility in order to play a map like Theme Park. They're lacking in it severely right now just because of the picks that Oxygen have been able to gather, and it's made these rounds so very easy for them. You can see Oxygen's not sweating in this position at all. Newer's that round, that was the easiest quad kill of his life.
Pretty much the case. So beautifully done as Nurs is finally able to get himself on the board. Has been more so going 1-for-1 or just having to back up in earlier rounds, but this time finally able to get himself in a fraggable position. Where he goes huge, as you mentioned there, with that very, very easy 4K to pick up here due to the splintered approach that Parabellum had to go for.
Well, we are going to have an adjustment for Parabellum. They're not going to be adhering. Well, actually, I take it back, John. At the very last second, they're going to switch up. They might have the broadcast on. I think that's what it is. No, but they're going to be switching things over to the Maverick past the Jackal here. I think that's a really smart pickup. They definitely need some extra hard breach, and to bring Mav is always a really strong flex pick because he has no counter, also has frag grenades, also has the M4. I mean, what more could you potentially want out of a hard breach operator? Past that, though, they're going to have Gunner on the Dokkaebi, so we'll have phone calls to be able to assist with these drones and clearing out most of the map. Everybody else, though, going to be back to basics. Eska was flirting with the Buck there just for a split second, but instead goes towards the Sledge as they recognize that it is indeed going to be an Armory Throne defense, and Sledge just makes a lot more sense here.
Nurs and Vert definitely getting a calm that there's going to be some action over here on Cafe side, so trying to rotate to get into the way of that. Parabellum do have a pretty even split, so there's definitely going to be at least one or two players, as you can see there, Eska and Penguin trying to entry in now, and it looks like there may actually be more rotates heading that direction. So if that ends up being the case, this is a really good read from Oxygen to get themselves in the way of this more directly that early on, but at the moment, it is still just a 2-2 split with players trying to enter from either side. Penguin with a nice read, but he's just a little bit too late to find the kill point against Laxing there. He escapes, gets himself off the camera just in the nick of time, and will scurry away to a different position with about half of his life left.
That was a little scary there for just a moment. Speaking of scary, Newer's going to get tagged up from, I believe, Penguin, who's clearing out this top floor very quickly with Eska, and they've gathered control. And quite the marker right now. Minute 45, and this is going to allow Eska so much time to be able to destroy this flooring. The big thing is, though, he has to play around Foxy with this Nitro Cell. You can see he's already got it pre-ripped. Also some information coming from upstairs as well. I mean, it's really down to Parabellum and how fast they want to try and enact upon the site at the current moment with this control. Azami obviously going to be able to assist in this as well. This is something that for a long time people were talking about. Can we get an operator like Castle that could potentially try and block off some angles from verticality? Well, it's came along in the form of kunai knives and quite the cool operator. So Newers will be able to assist with that as this timer continues to dwindle. Parabellum want to try and get the split hatch open and seek other greens to see what they can try and do with this Oxygen setup.
Actually, a really good thing we ended up bringing the Maverick, not only, of course, the reason of needing the secondary hard breach, but now as well, they would have needed it to be able to get past this hatch as Kane was brought into the fold. Foxy finally deploying out that Nitro makes an impact, but Penguin replying right back with a fragmentation grenade of his own to knock out Nurs. That should, I believe, open up the position over towards Lab, as I think that's where Nurs was trying to aim his position towards. Laxing, of course, had to fall back earlier due to being spotted on the top down, but Vert is still in the area, so they're not totally clear over towards Lab just yet. They'll have to be cautious of that, as now Kool-Aid kind of awkwardly walks in, not getting any resistance at all. I'm thinking he's safe for the plant. Penguin again, always here for the exchange, it seems. He's been the hero right now on this round as he picks up another kill. Vertical, though, puts it down to 2 again for Parabellum, leaving them with just Penguin and Gunnar in the fight. Penguin streak finally up. The Dragon Door push rolls in as well from Gunnar, but it's only good for 1 as he's exchanged out quite quickly. And one more time, OXG continue to put up rounds here on their defensive half.
That's a great Daft Punk song. Very, very nice choice there.
Oh, true, yeah.
Indeed. No, well, Oxygen now 3-round lead over Parabellum, and a lot of different things to talk about here. First things first, look at this clock. 30 seconds remaining. Kool-Aid pushing into the armory side of things to try and get a plant down. Ill-advised. Nobody overwatching when it comes to the verticality. Really shouldn't have done that. Don't know why they're trying to throw things and just hope that it sticks towards the site when you have everybody and their brother playing on site. But it seems like they knew something that we didn't. But I think the big thing to identify with Oxygen's setup there is going back to what we had with, Dream. Dream in that position when he's playing at the back of Throne, if you don't do anything with his position, he's more than likely going to win Oxygen the round. There's nothing that you can really do to stop him besides getting those walls open or trying to get something going over the top of those walls or even potentially, manning the Dragon Door or something along those lines. But we're not seeing Parabellum really try and do with any of these site players. They've done a pretty good job of, dealing with the roam sometimes, but also that's been their ending sometimes as well. I think that overall it's been pretty sporadic from them, if I'd had to say. I feel like there's still quite a few things that they need to work out. They're just not on the same page at the moment, and they're just trying to force things and make it work.
I mean, with regards to the Dream issue, right? Let's go back to the first defense on Throne. He pretty much single-handedly won them that round as he picked up 3 out of 5 of the kills from that back Throne position there. I think it was 1 player from Dragon Door, 2 from Connector. He just knocked him straight out there. No real chance of a challenge against him, unfortunately, until he got traded out, I think. But by that point, it was like a 1v3, so there was no real hope for that player to try an entry from that point forward. But even beyond that, there's just been 0 attempts to try and take electrical control and knock that wall down. Some rounds just because they don't really have the hard breach to do it, but other rounds we saw in the last one there had 2 hard breaches. The Hibana, no real targets to deploy towards, so just not really making an attempt to do that. And I understand that like Hibana would have been pretty difficult to knock that wall down because they had Cade in play, but still.
And honestly, that was what I was about to say next. If we're mostly breaching walls, why are we bringing Hibana? We should be bringing Maverick, and we should be bringing Thermite to get these walls open and make it much more difficult for the site players to try and fight any of this. Hibana has the longest fuse time of any hard breach utility in the entire game, and you've barely used her this entire time. The last time that I saw X-Kairos go down was on Office Wall when I believe Fox or Laxing was playing in there, and I believe that was the initiation round where things went awry anyways. So it just seems like they're not exactly setting themselves up for success in the best way possible.
It's not even like the Thatcher ban's an issue, too, because specifically with Electrical Wall, there's a massive gap over it. You just nade over it and knock them out. So.
Yeah, especially if you have Maverick. You can bring 2 sets of nades on top of that. You bring the Yana, the Sledge, you have 6 grenades, you have Burn with a Thermite, then your flex pick is whatever you want. You want Dokkaebi? Bring it. Like, it doesn't matter. It's very awkward for them right now, and I don't necessarily know what the game plan is behind Parabellum's thoughts, but it's definitely something that I want to try and talk to them about later.
To be fair,
continues.
This was somewhat expected. If you heard us and the analysis desk talking about how Oxygen had a pretty good edge on this map, and we really needed to see Parabellum come out strong on the attacking side, was able to do that for 1 round. But aside from that, though, definitely still a lot of things it seems like are kind of in the kitchen right now for this team. They're cooking them up, they're trying to work it out, and they'll certainly have time to do that throughout the rest of this stage here. But it seems like they may have just jumped into this map, versus Oxygen at least, a bit prematurely. As we are ready, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for sticking with us there. We did have a little bit of a rehost due to a drone bug, but we are back in the game now. If you are just joining us, it's currently a fairly one-sided match, unfortunately, in the favor of Oxygen, as they are crushing it versus Parabellum, 4-1, heading into the final round of the opening half with Oxygen on defense.
I feel like Parabellum's kind of like Thomas Edison trying to make the light bulb right now. Like, you're still really smart, but you just haven't gotten to the final product
The thing is, though, you got to give respect to Parabellum because, like, they are one of these teams that's more willing to try these strats that ultimately in the match, like, don't really end up working that well. But at least they're willing to try them is the thing. And I do give them quite a bit of respect for that because we don't generally tend to see that at a lot of other teams in this region.
Yeah, and you know, that's something that you have to be dedicated to. When you and your teammates, even if it's, your stack, you have to be dedicated to the play style that your team plays, and that's something that Parabellum has always been dedicated to. And you know, also been dedicated to, John, wacky things like this. Fuse coming in.
We were just talking about it, right?
Yes,
like how they like to try things.
Yeah, and I think that this is a great pick, especially for this kind of a site, because not only does Fuse have an LMG, and that's really strong in the current meta, and he's also sharing the 100, the one that Finka also has, but he has secondary hard breach now, which is great. You know, a nice little layer to that hard breach, like we were talking about before. You really want to try and layer up that utility and make sure that if one person dies, you still have more. But on top of that, he also has the cluster charges that go through hard breach now. So you can get it through a hatch, you can get it through a wall or whatever, as long as it's not electrified. So it's a really strong option for Fuse on a site like this, especially when you're working that verticality. But as you can see, Oxygen have put a roadblock here with Fox and Laxing on the top floor.
Actually, it might have been, obviously it's going to be a little too late for this now, as Oxygen have thrown it blocked away, but that could have been a potential alternate method of flushing Dream out of that back throne position too, if we go back to thinking about that. But that's in the future and the past at the same time. So let's focus on the present now. So we have Blaz trying to make the entry against Laxing here. Drone is not going to spot him out, so he's going to roll right forward. It's an easy shot for him. Gunnar does find an exchange against Newers' roam, and then second one too versus Dream. Beautiful. He's in. He's gotten the site. He's just gone in lab and taken full control. The only problem is you guys have probably seen it yourself. Kool-Aid's literally on the opposite side of the map right now while controlling the case, and Fox is knocking out the resistance, putting a massive roadblock in the way between the progress that Gunnar just made and the play that Kool-Aid now needs to do.
Just drop everything and run to stalls or run to drug. The entire site is still empty. They're going to continue to try and fight Oxygen on this top floor, I think, John. This is not the proper thing in order to do. I mean, they have the verticality they could potentially play through, so Parabellum could be potentially worried about that. And honestly, I wouldn't fight them for that at all. But the big thing is they're losing so many bodies now. Gunnar has been sitting inside of sight for over a minute.
Kool-Aid's finally
just
coming.
waiting. And finally, Kool-Aid's going to make a shift, but Oxygen's already damaged them. They're at the advantage now. Gunnar going to continue to try and hold down this site, but I mean, with 3 bodies slowly working their way back, this could be hard fought. He's going to have to try and find these disjointed fights here. He works his way back and forth. We practically switch sides here. Funny enough, Nook and D does have that FMG-9, so practically smoke at the current moment with how these grenades are being used. Plant will finally start going down and it won't be identified out from Oxygen just yet, but as soon as I say that, the plant will be confirmed and they'll obviously be on red alert as well. Foxy will get found from Gunner, but he won't be able to confirm just yet. Knows another one's around. Laxing gets taken down. Could be a quad for him around. Make it an ace as Gunner doesn't need a single teammate. Kool-Aid, just get your ass over here and plant, and I'll win the round for us myself.
The strategy is thrown in the dumpster, but that does not even matter for Parabellum, as Gunnar does literally everything by himself, from the site entry to the closing clutch. It all falls to him, and he puts a very much needed second round on the board for Parabellum as they close out this half 2-4.
And this is what I was saying. Stop messing with Oxygen on the top floor. You don't need it. Just leave. There's so many exits in Theme Park. I mean, every room practically has a window to the outside. Just go jump outside and rotate to your friend that has the site. Fortunately enough, Parabellum are able to get it done, and they do secure that second round, so they at least have a pretty good cushion for this defensive end to try and bring it back against Oxygen. But as we've seen from OXG, when it comes to Theme Park, it doesn't slow down when it gets to the offensive side.
So, ladies and gentlemen, time to see if Parabellum can now change up their own fate a little bit after a very impressive clutch coming in there from the new member of this team as well. Gunnar with the 5-0 on the scoreboard. It's obviously we have the rehost there, so it's not fully reflective of the stats from this game, but looks pretty impressive at the beginning of this round, that's to be sure. Oxygen, though, as Stokes just mentioned, is no slouch when it comes to the attacking side of this map either. It's going to bring some interesting things into the fold here. Also, for the play on this map, we've seen yours kind of fall back onto a secondary pick, obviously, since we do have the Finka band out right now. He'll be on to Zofia instead, still with the LMG, of course, to play into, just a little bit different of an operator.
So I wanted to touch base with this really quickly because this is something that you and I saw quite often when it came to our weekend with Gamers Without Borders, and it happens to be the Castle Azami duo and the amount of utility that these two provide together. Castle having 4 barricades now, and with Azami having 5 of the Kiba barriers, it makes it quite difficult to clear out a lot of the utility when it comes to different angles that you want to try and occupy because, well, obviously the Kibas, you can punch 3 times, but more than often than not, they're going to be at an area where if you do punch it, you could potentially be punished. So a lot of people will dedicate their explosive utility instead. So that makes it to where you have to pick and choose the different angles that you want to try and take a hold of. And we'll have to see what Auction want to do with this. As Parabellum setup is quite deep, but Blaz sitting on 2 new knives as well, just to try and add to the pile later on in the round. Grenade out, should be able to handle the wall here. I do believe it kind of got caught up there, or potentially just didn't hit the angle right. And actually it's going to get caught up again. This is more than likely, let me see here before I speak. Yeah, it's more than likely a interesting Electro Claw. I don't know what they did with this. There's no deployable shield or anything. Penguin, I can't believe what I just witnessed with my eyes. That thing only has 3 shotgun shells in it, and Fox is dead to rights from the Super Shorty.
It was just so casual, too. He just got the comm like, hey, I think they're trying to make their way in through electrical. He's like, oh, that's no problem. Just pops it open and gets a lucky 3rd shot kill. Not even lucky, but just a very well-played 3rd shot kill off against Foxy there. Nicely done. As Parabellum's going to get the entry going for themselves here, or the opening kill, I should say, to start off the first round of the second half.
I mean, just look at how delayed Oxygen are in this position. This is all due to Parabellum's setup on this top floor. There's so much convoluted utility. And it's like, okay, well, how do we exactly dissect this? I've never had to deal with a position like this before. And a perfect example is going to be Newers here. Look how he's going to bounce back and forth between all of these different angles that they have made up. Because, again, the defense is the one who constructed all of this. So he has to worry about so many different ways he could potentially be punished here. And speaking of punished, Eska, he's going to spray wide up against Laxing, that 416C, doing him no justice as Parabellum will lose their first body in the last minute.
You can definitely see the reasoning behind why Parabellum wanted to go into this map, too. Just these more intricate defensive setups, I think, are what they're going to be trying to rely on to win this game. But they'll have to hope, even with the negative 2-round deficit here, that they'll be able to make up the difference. Vertical, though, as you can see, very close to his entry point, waiting for the opportunity for Penguin to peek, but he doesn't. He just inches his way out, and Vertical will never even see him, as Penguin is instead able to exchange that kill out for Parabellum, bringing it down to a 4v3 now in the favor of PB, leaving Oxygen with a bit of a question as to how they get themselves into the site, and that, unfortunately, is not the way to go about it. Gunnar immediately shuts down Dream, leaving, unfortunately, the last 2 players without much of an option here. They just have to force the issue into the site, which they can't even do that because there's a Kiba barricade in the way. That'll be blown up. Penguin, again, striking true here. Gets a 3rd kill on the round before Blaz shuts out Laxing and ends it as PB now just 1 round away from tying it up, and PB getting heated here as well.
Started to feel some of that energy as they're within 1 round of tying things up with Oxygen, who have a lackluster start to their offensive side, have no real read as to how to try and dismantle Parabellum's setup, and a big punish there on the Foxay to start things off, making it to where they no longer have that map torch and easy access to the back end of the site. Past that, Parabellum just taking it to Oxygen time and time again around the majority of the map, and then Oxygen obviously just trying to sit on the clock and see what they can try and get done with the last minute and 30 seconds with their 3 bodies. Really can't get anything. They try and work their way in through split, but the setup's too strong. Vertical trying to get an easy one on the cross from his position that he adopted, but due to the fact that he was sitting so close to the side of that door, obviously the free peek came in from the castle, and it was all she wrote for that round. So Parabellum, luckily enough, still have some signs of life. We'll see what they can get done on this second follow-up.
The cap can going to roll out for Parabellum on this round as well, so more than likely going to be trying to capitalize if they can replicate the same early to mid-round back as in round number 7 there, where they kind of slow things down from Oxygen, make them take this very slow pace. But ultimately, at the end of the round, they'll run out of time and be forced to just kind of rush their way in. So Gunnar more than likely hoping that when we get to that rushed phase of the round, he can capitalize on that and catch one of the members of Oxygen running through a double stack point here with his EDDs. We'll see if that comes to bear, of course, as we have about 2 minutes or so before Oxygen will reach that sort of stress point, if you will. And it's going to be a bit more slow going for them as they try to figure out once again the more tricky setup that Parabellum may have deployed towards on this round, if it's going to be anything similar to what we got back on the last one.
30 seconds in now as Newers start his way in through cash for the opener for Oxygen. No real presence around for Parabellum. Quite a ways down there to the following room, but obviously a known angle from Newers, so open up some new walls and try and hold things down on the bunk end of things. It'll be a swing from the initial member up top, and also an identification that somebody's playing farther back inside of break. Begin torching up the wall, I do believe, here, and actually, in fact, no, I do believe it's going to be the secondary hard breach instead. And as will indeed. As Dream will open up that wall now, be able to have at least a new angle back here. But Parabellum, they're not looking to get too aggressive just yet. That's more than likely we're going to have Oxygen switch up and try and hold on to some separate angles, making it a little bit easier to clear out this top floor.
Oxygen, as you said, kind of stuck inside of the initiation and office limit right now, trying to push their way past that further onto the site. They will actually catch the break room player. Gunner's going to end up going down. Will not be confirmed, so there's actually a good chance he gets revived. Dream, though, gets the angle needed in order to finish him off. As Foxay was also hunting for it, as you can see here from the repelled position just outside of the break room window. Kool-Aid is going to look for a chance at revenge, and he may very well get it soon, but no, is called back instead. We'll fall into the depths of the site and play into Lab, which is a site that actually I don't believe we saw Oxygen go towards. Actually, no, we did towards the end of it, so I'll correct myself on that real quickly. Parabellum, in the meanwhile, now going to use it for their own devices here as they try to shut down some of this top-down pressure. As you see, though, Oxygen very much going to be hunting for those targets themselves. This will be a fairly close duel at the end of the day as both teams try to field an advantage against each other. And Parabellum just trying to slow things down more than anything.
Yeah, this could become a pretty big issue depending on how the utility goes here. Not only is Buck getting this all open, Kool-Aid, crucial shots there, but not a single one actually landing on Dream. That's a problem with those iron bars. They can really mess with your shot when you're trying to track somebody. And some of those crucial shots, it could have potentially been even like a headshot or something, will end up getting eaten up instead. Oxygen have plenty of utility to deal with this site setup. Blast still has 2 discs though, so depending on where he puts these, are really going to need the stuns out of Laxing and these frag grenades to hit their mark. But as time continues to dwindle, Parabellum's position is getting stronger and stronger. Laxing though, something to say about that as Eska will go down. 15 seconds remain. Case is on Dream. He's going to push his way into Lab, but he's been taken down by Penguin, who's in behind the stacks. He's going to continue to hold on to this as Kool-Aid picks up yet another one, and it's going to be an easy kill to try and prevent anyone from getting a hold of this Case. Last one with the SMG-11, but it doesn't matter as he'll get taken down. Parabellum win because Oxygen can't make the decision to push to site.
Yeah, Oxygen seemingly just a lack of confidence to be able to make their play into the actual site there. Had everything they needed, had pretty much infinite top-down angles over the entire site, over every single bunker position that the members of Parabellum would have wanted to play into, but never really having the confidence to make that transition from the first floor down to the second. I'm unsure if there was some delays in moving players down yellow, or they just didn't have confidence in the arcade push, but something pushed them into a complete stop. And as a result of that, Parabellum ended up with the advantage of only having to defend that site for like 15 or 10 seconds at the end of the round, meaning that they just ended up running right into the setup there, and specifically right into Penguin, who picked up another nice triple kill for himself. He's really been going off so far this game. A massive rock that Parabellum needed.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'd really like to get a recount on Oxygen's utility across the board there, because I didn't even see the concussions get used out of the lifeline they could have when we were, you know, across across the map, but I mean, you're talking about 2 extra frags, 2 extra stun grenades, and possibly concussions all in that position with those vertical angles as well. It just doesn't make any sense that Oxygen couldn't break that up and try to at least isolate somebody inside of a lab or something like that. I mean, Penguin was playing in a position that was easily abusable if they know that he's there, and with a lot of that utility, there could have been, a pretty strong discovery period for them near the tail end of that round, but instead just try and see if Parabellum will give them any looks, and they definitely did, but it was Oxygen that was staring down the barrel.
Either way, I think both of us agree with the timing of this pause from Oxygen right now, given the way that that last round played out. Potentially about to lose the lead as well, so pretty much not a more appropriate time they could have thrown it in. We'll see if it'll yield results, though, potentially speed up this play from Oxygen to make Parabellum a bit more uncomfortable and force a few more mistakes out of this setup. Important to note as well, of course, Parabellum are now out of downstairs sites to deploy into, so they can no longer win just by spreading themselves out and kind of out-confusing the Oxygen roster. They will have to play a bit more directly this time from the second floor.
Yes, indeed. And what is Oxygen thinking of when it comes to this lineup here? They're going to be dedicated to the one hard breach, but they won't be bringing the Habana. Instead, they'll be bringing the Thermite. We had a discussion earlier about the big differences in between those two. Not only fuse timers, but also who is better at breaching walls. And it's Thermite by a country mile. He has always been so very strong when it comes to making those quite large holes that he's very quick at being able to blow. So past that, Gunnar will get tagged up initially here. So he'll be able to skimper off deeper into Theme Park, but definitely going to be something that we can call back on later if he ends up trying to take a important gunfight. But that's going to be the first 40 seconds here for Oxygen, as they've been able to dedicate some drones that have lost their lives, but hopefully it will suit them in doing things down the line. And speaking of Gunnar, still as active as ever, even at the lacking HP, as he'll take down Newers, who, since the break, 0-3.
Not a good start to the round again for Oxygen, meaning we'll more than likely have to see that slow follow-up that to some extent led to defeat back on round 8 as well. Won't really have a choice in it just because of the fact they're going to be down a player. So need to be very careful in trying to make up for that trade here. Gunnar already lined up to fend off against the players that may peek into arcade windows, so more than likely will fend off the pressure from Oxygen in that department. They have, I believe, made an entry into Cafe, so they've taken some control over there, but aside from that, it's very slow going right now as OXG try to build up their intel bank and figure out the best way to flush Parabellum out of this arcade position, which is the main thing stopping them from moving forward at this point.
Lots of utility usage, but nothing else, as finally some gunfights go back and forth. Dream will get tagged up just a touch, as well as Penguin, but finally it's starting to see as though these two teams are colliding. Vertical now getting tagged up as well. Parabellum steadfast in their positioning, especially around arcade balconies. Still have so many of these Kiba barricades around to be able to play off of as well, and it's making life quite difficult for Oxygen at the current moment. Dream getting tagged up even more than previously, and the case is indeed still on him. Fortunately enough for him, though, Penguin only has one more of his smoke, so only a little bit of potential for him to get taken out by that. Vertical will get swung on, but won't have control of the angle at the current moment. Blaz working back and forth, and just look at this position that he's allowed to play because of these Kiba barricades. This is what makes these things so very interesting. There's no explosives on the offense. They can't get rid of these. The only person that could really do anything would be Foxay with a sledge, but I mean, they're not even gonna try and check this angle because it's so awkward. Blaz catches him off guard. He'll do it yet again here in Vertical. You're not gonna be able to do anything with that position because I'm gonna cross yet again and make it behind my other Kiba barricade. Vertical and Foxay, the last one's alive. Some pre-fires, but Blaz is still going to make it through because it's such a pinhole there on that Kiba barricade. They can barely slide any bullets through. Foxay will get taken down. It's up to Vertical to try and win it out. He'll take out Gunnar, but with 2 seconds remaining, Parabellum will run to the hills, and they'll take the lead.
If we saw Oxygen, I think, not lose that initial fight with Newers and be able to keep him, I feel like we could have ended up with a tradable outcome there for Oxygen, but it was just a hesitation behind the fact that they were coming back from 4v5. And then on top of that, as you were saying, those barricades that were being thrown out from Azami, that was just some dirty stuff from Parabellum, not giving the Oxygen roster any real room to realistically pick up the entries they needed. And as a result, just like the round before that, they are forced to run out the clock, force themselves into the site, and right into the waiting hands of Parabellum. So with that, they take the lead and are now going to go up 5-4. Just 2 rounds are needed now for Parabellum to give us an upset victory versus OXG.
I'm loving the way that we're seeing Parabellum use Azami in the current moment. Funny enough, actually, back in the day when when Mira got implemented into the game. The Ubi devs were talking about how she was kind of a new classification of operator, an architect operator, somebody that could remake the map and make certain areas more difficult for the offense to attack and so on and so forth. Azami feels like the most true to form version of that statement, where she is actively changing the battlefield inside of the round, and it makes it to where you have to be able to adapt. And also on top of that, you really don't know if they're going to be playing off of that piece of utility, if they're going to be sitting back, if you should destroy it, exactly, you know, what overall is going on. And the big thing is with Azami as well, ladies and gentlemen, there's infinite possibilities with this operator. I cannot stress this enough. There is so many different ways that you can use this operator. It is astounding. Like, I have straight up saved all of my knives and sealed a hole back up on CCTV on Clubhouse because it was like a 2v4. I just sealed all of the entire balcony back up and the CCTV window, John. Like, she can do so many different things that nobody ever has been able to do inside of Siege. And it makes it to where this game is just so much more fun to watch on top of what we already have going on.
I would not be surprised if this continues to become more and more of a trend. Azami, which is kind of like a given at this point.
It's a breath of fresh air, man.
Yeah, it really seems like teams are going to kind of have to use her to an extent. And because of that, I would not be surprised, since we're seeing teams struggle to knock down those barricades, we started to see Zofia and Ashpick start to become more common.
Don't get my hopes
to try and get rid of that more easily,
right,
because you do need that range soft reach. It feels like now, and it feels like you're really limiting yourself if you don't have it, as we just saw in that last round.
I mean, I don't have to say this because mostly everybody at home knows, but I mean, they know
you're
I'm
gonna get
a large supporter of an R4C player. You know, the G36C, I still hold some prejudice against, but yeah, that's it. That's for another day. But I would definitely like to see some more. You know what?
That are a lot more gun sixes.
Well, let's back it up one more level. I don't really care about Ash that much anymore, if I'm being honest with you guys. What I really care about is the backing off of LMGs. I want to see ARs more. I want to see more assault rifles. I just think that it's a healthier version of Siege, but that's just my personal opinion. Not to say that the meta that we have at the current moment is exactly terrible to watch, because I definitely think it's pretty fun being able to watch some of the Hell in the Cell moments that we get with these LMGs. But it's been going on for a while, man. I'm ready to go back and see what we can potentially get out of like the M762 and the R4C and all of these fun guns that we have inside of this game.
Well, Oxygen are out on the field yet again. Once again, folks, thank you very much for sticking with us there. We did have a quick tactical pause to fix a player's monitor, but that has been resolved. And obviously, we are back in the game now. Parabellum looking to shut it down here with just 2 more rounds needed to go into their pocket. And Oxygen looking to fight back after they had a booming start to this game at 4-2. They have yet to pick up a round inside of this attacking half just yet. So we'll see if this one will be the one where they can finally find, as I believe we're going to be going to a throne room defense here for PB once again.
Penguin with a pretty creative angle here. Usually when it comes to the offense, you're not too worried about the verticality when it comes to the bottom floor, unless obviously it's quite present, then something you'd more than likely be aware of. But the position from Penguin, definitely something you can slip through the cracks with and potentially get an early kill. But unfortunately enough, it's actually going to go the opposite way. Penguin will be able to pick up vertical as he hops in the top of Dragon, but Newers is immediately going to refrag and be able to pick up Blast, who's already had quite the day here. Been great watching him play with Parabellum so far. I hope the remainder of the stage for him and Gunnar continue to be as strong as what they've shown for us, at least at the current moment. But as of right now, Parabellum, worse for wear, as Auction are looking to tie things up.
OXG here with a much better start to the round, and Parabellum not able to capitalize on their own aggressive positions to slow the play from OXG as they had been in the previous few rounds so far in this half. Now it's Parabellum that has to give the respect over to Oxygen. This is an unfamiliar situation for them, so we'll have to see if they can thrive inside of it, continue to waste down the time bank here, and ultimately try to run it out. As we're going to see Kool-Aid here line up with the Nitro to deploy back. Goes a little bit too far though. Dream finds the Goldilocks zone in between the 2 points there and is able to avoid the damage outright. Even better, of course, for Oxygen. They successfully get the charge down and are able to open up the wall, meaning Kool-Aid's position is going to be quite more exposed than it was a few seconds ago.
Frag grenade out for Fox, trying to clean up some utility around the site. Good position here for Kool-Aid. Will get taken down. Newers seemingly aware that someone's on the back flank, and he is correct. Aska be the next one to fall. All down to Penguin now inside of Split, and he's being watched by Laxing. Fantastic overwatch from this position, and now Oxygen tie things up again. Both of these teams now have the ability to close it out inside of regulation, but if we continue to go back and forth, it will surely be overtime. Now the big thing here is Parabellum. Quite a showcase so far when it comes to this defensive end. They've been able to go blow for blow with Oxygen. It has not been Oxygen playing poorly either. I would say that a big aspect of this is not only been Parabellum being able to stave off a couple of those important rounds for their offensive side, but also the way that they were able to catch Oxygen off guard initially with this defense.
Yeah, up until our previous round, Parabellum were just straight about shredding Oxygen here and winning purely on that method, along with the great fight-taking capability we saw as a result of the confusion coming out from OXG. It seems like OXG did finally catch on to it in the previous round, though, especially from the entry capability. Much more consistent there in terms of keeping that early lead and keeping most of their players alive to push it into what I believe was a 4vx scenario as we got down into the execute. So retying things up now. Parabellum no longer in the lead, of course, and that'll start to cause a bit of stress in their comms. But let's see if they can thrive inside of that. Choosing not to go back to the throne room defense, they will continue their normal rotation over towards Lab to see if that yields better results for them. Meanwhile, Oxygen has spawned out, of course, and we're going to bring a similar lab to what we have seen before, but because we are working with the top down, there is an extra emphasis on soft breach this time, so that's why you'll see the Buck also bought for Dream.
Absolutely the case, and past that, Oxygen, they're dedicating themselves to the low number hard breach as well, and even going one step further. Parabellum were at least bringing Habana. This time we're just going, hey, we got secondary hard breach, that's all we're really going to need. And honestly, for a site like this, they're most definitely right. You really don't need a thermite or anything when it comes to drug. You're really looking to try and abuse these top-down angles and maybe potentially add one of those secondary hard breaches to like the hallway so you can try and get some stronger angles on Lab, but that's really about it. Hard breach doesn't play too well into this exact site. You could obviously try and use it to break up some other parts of the map, make clearing out this top floor a little bit easier, but we'll just have to see what they want to try and go for. Newers, although, in this case, has snuck into maintenance. We'll be able to get rid of at least the default camera as he continues on his journey. As for the rest of Oxygen, it's going to take some time to wind things up. They're trying to measure twice and cut once with this situation as they really want to be on match point first.
We'll see which team is able to accomplish that goal. Parabellum still kind of moving around the map, hunting for initial targets, and Penguin has successfully found one. Once again, man, Penguin always on point here with regards to these initial entries. It's going to be a bit of a forward push, however, is how he's able to find it against Oxygen here. Foxy trying to hop in through the lab window to push himself forward, but is ultimately going to be shut down as he attempts to do so. Vertical took a few shots as well, but then I'll change up his position, rotate over here towards the arcade hop-in. We'll be able to make a successful play forward. Nurs will run into a little bit of trouble as you see some health bleeding off from him, but Vertical with a very forward insertion here. He could waltz right into a free kill. We'll see if that's going to be the case, and indeed it shall, as he knocks out Penguin and equalizes things down into a 4v4. We'll lose a teammate a second later, however, finally seeing those Capcan traps come out and play properly here for Parabellum, as it's going to be able to knock down Dream, but it won't be able to stop this plant coming in from Laxing, as Nurs also picks up another kill versus Eska.
Into the post plant we go. Parabellum with the retake, looking very similar to what we saw from Oxygen on their defensive setup here. Now, Parabellum swinging on through. They'll be able to take down Vertical on the back end of the site, but the case placement, this is going to make things so difficult for Parabellum. They're actually more than likely going to have to try and jump out or something quite similar in order to stop this from happening. A nade in, but it's not going to be able to catch Blaz, and in fact, all it does is just make it where Gunner can just hold onto the angle. It's going to be a bad spot here from the other Oxygen member all the way back, just assuming that they're going to try and defuse right on top of the case, and it's just a bad call. Parabellum now up and onto match point for the first time against Oxygen. This will be a 6-5 scoreline.
I'm so sad we can't hear this right now. I would love to see, or love to hear rather, what these players are going through, as it is wild right now. Just watching it from the camera POV, seeing Parabellum pop off after such a poor start to this game as well, going like 4-1, I think, at its worst here to rebound and now have the lead at our final round of regulation. Certainly has to be amping this roster up a little bit, especially if you're considering to the map they took Oxygen to. You heard it from all of us, even back at the desk. We were like, Parabellum made a mistake. This was an awful choice to go to this map. They're going to get crushed. They've already proven us wrong for the most part on that point, and now just have to lock in one final round to prove it to themselves and Oxygen that they can indeed challenge the best of the best when it comes to theme park. Obviously, guys, we do have a little bit of a rehost here real quick, so stick with us one more time, and we will be back in game, hopefully within the next 2 to 3 minutes.
Yeah, the Parabellum boys are seeming a lot more comfortable than what they were initially. Not saying that the team didn't look good. I definitely did think that they looked quite strong with Creators and Kool-Aid in, but I mean, this team right here, especially for their first map, inside of the NAL, they're looking looking very, very solid. Cool, calm, and collected. I mean, they were down quite a few rounds from Oxygen as well, so that's going to weigh on your mental, and they were still able to bounce back. So, I mean, I think they're proving a lot of naysayers wrong, including us, like you were saying from our earlier discussion about the team, but they still have to be able to close out. It's a problem for quite a few teams when it comes to Siege. Yes, you can get it all the way to the limit, but can you push it past that to be able to actually take the victory? Oxygen, obviously, only one round away from pushing us to overtime here on Theme Park, and that's where things could get dicey as we switch back and forth, only sidewise when it comes in between rounds.
Definitely the case here. So just waiting once again for our rehost to complete itself. Should be pretty much close to done here, folks. And then we'll be hopping back into the game to see if Oxygen can rebound here, if they can find that consistency more than anything to get themselves a solid positioning, to get themselves started out at the beginning of the round, or if Parabellum continue to harass them inside of this first 2 minutes, destabilize their late game plans, and cause them to have to try and pull an audible, which, as you guys have seen, has generally not played out too well for the Oxygen roster when they have been forced to change away from the initial game plan. Fox as well. You can hear both teams giving a little bit of insight as they get ready to hop into what could very well be the final round of this game. It's a very tense moment, and the fact that we've had to hop out of game for it is probably going to make it even tenser, as it's giving these teams an extra few minutes of preparation before they hop into probably the most important round of this game.
All right, well, fortunately enough, we've gotten everybody back into the lobby. Just want to make sure that everybody is ready and set before we hop back in. And I mean, honestly, John, if I have to say anything at the current moment, I'm kind of disappointed in Fox, not because of his gameplay, but because he didn't dye his hair. He's just back to basic. I was expecting something here, but we're just back to brown Fox. How did we land here? You know, if Oxygen end up losing today, I expect his hair to be dyed by tomorrow. That is obviously the problem. There is nothing else that happened inside of this match.
Focus on the gameplay. You know, he hasn't had time to hit the hair salon
Yeah,
yet.
yeah, and that's the problem. You gotta take some time for yourself too. You know,
treat yourself.
Exactly. Mental health is the best health. And well, as we are just a couple of moments away to getting back into this series, hopefully both of these teams' mentals are ready and set. As Oxygen, it's kind of been slipping away from them in a certain sense. Parabellum starting to fight back and land some pretty heavy blows throughout these rounds as well.
Very, very different kind of faces on either side of the stage right now. You can see Oxygen just very focused, very, I wouldn't say worried necessarily, but just kind of concentrate, ready to get back into the game. Parabellum, they're amped. I think even if they end up losing this in overtime, which is what it would have to go to now, this is probably still a moral victory for them at the end of the day, because they managed to push this match this far against, as you heard our analysis just say, one of the best teams in North America on this map. So they're probably already like, guys, yep, the attacking side, that's not the greatest. We could talk about that after the game, but we are crushing it on defense right now, and that's probably all we care about.
Yeah, Penguin was not lying when he was saying that they really want to shoot for top 4, or rather Gunnar was saying that he really wanted to set the bar at making top 4 and going to a major event. You know, this team is hungry. They want to continue to grow, and you can say that for every single team inside of North America at the current moment. It's a dog-eat-dog world when it comes to North America right now. So, I mean, we're going to have to see. Even today has just been a showcase of how competitive things are going to be across the board. And really, I'm excited to see what Stage 2 has in store for us, especially when we have a team like Parabellum that's taken it to somebody like Oxygen, who was such a strong showing, or had such a strong showing inside of Stage 1, and even past that at Charlotte. Obviously, Parabellum with some extra time since they weren't able to attend, and it's definitely paid off.
Once again, guys, thank you very much for standing by with us there. The bug has been resolved, so we are back in game now, continuing to play this out as Parabellum looks to lock in a victory. That would be the very end of regulation time. It's 7-5, and Oxygen look to stop that, of course, and send us into overtime. It's going to be against the upstairs hold here for Parabellum, so need to definitely brace themselves for it. Oxygen was able to bring this one under their own control. Actually, never mind, that was downstairs inside of Throne Room. So Parabellum won this one on the last attempts. They're just looking to repeat the success they've already found previously and lock in that 7th and final round. Meanwhile, on the Oxygen side of things, bringing a lot of additional hard breach this time around to be able to properly work their way into the site. This was also a problem that Parabellum couldn't really work their way past. We haven't seen actually struggle with too much here. Their issues have been a little bit of a different kind, as we've been talking about in the downtime.
Yeah, they've been using this attacker repick to its fullest potential when it comes to selecting their hard breaches, and that's exactly what you want to see. Once you get that site figured out and you have at least the initial strategy of what's going on, what these reinforcements are going to be and what you initially want to take, that's when you want to try and make your decision on that, and that's how Oxygen have been able to hit their mark majority of the time when it comes to this department. department. Newers will begin popping up some hatches. That way they can at least get some info game going here as Oxygen are indeed onto the board here. Trying to figure out what exactly Parabellum want to hold on to. They're trying to play quite forward here for Throne, or rather for Initiation, as well as Office. Throwing a nade in, be caught up by the disc inside of Waiting Room. As Parabellum just have to basically sit on their hands at the current moment. Not too much of a forward motion needed here. It's going to be Oxygen that has to try and force their way in. Some more solid drone info to come through, but now they're going to be lacking quite a few drones due to that as well.
Both teams desperately hunting for that opening pick here. Lots of intel going deep onto one of the members of Parabellum, holding deeper in Initiation. I believe that is going to be Blaz playing into that corner right now. Calling out the barricades as well, trying to catch him on a movement play, but it's not going to work out. The timing just not there for Newers, as OXG still trying to knock that player out, and they will successfully be able to do so. Blaz finally knocked out by Newers. Patience is a virtue indeed for Oxygen, as they're able to open up their first way forward, but thankfully with the sledge as well, these Kiba barricades not going to be getting too much into the way. Eska does try to go in for a quick attempt at a trade versus the sledge, but will be forced into a corner as well, and now bites off a little bit too much. Newers gets the second one rolling for Oxygen here to bring it down to a 3v5.
And Newers is back on it as he takes out the first 2 kills for Oxygen's sake. Foxay, hot water right now inside of the waiting hallway, but luckily enough, is able to stave off elimination. Cooley continues to swing back and forth here on the yellow wall. Look at some information on that from the sensor of Vertical as he runs in with the Gemini clone. Foxay continuing to hold on to things. Oxygen just waiting to see what Parabellum's next move is going to be. They've been able to push them back towards site, and now the utility doing a lot of work to spearhead them forward. Haven't been able to find an exact plant spot just yet, as Kool-Aid and the rest of the gang for Parabellum holding on to the entry points at the current moment. A pre-fire here from Newers will take out yet another, possibly a quad kill coming in onto the back break room player, but no, be stuck away from him as Foxay will take away at least the cause for an ace, and it'll be a double kill for him. A flawless round for Oxygen as it just slowly dwindles for Parabellum. They really don't have anything to do inside of that game, and just kind of seemed like more of a T-hunt kind of situation for Oxygen, walking through, picking up their frags, and ending it all with the gun power.
That's the type of play we needed to see from Oxygen to be able to lock this down way earlier in the game. Unfortunate for them that they find it so late, but it does at least push us into overtime here. Beautifully done as they finally shut down a defensive round for Parabellum, with obviously no responses showing up due to the flawless nature of it. That launches us into an additional 3 rounds. 8 is the number to win here, folks, as OXG is going to be able to keep the mantle of the attacking side. Could be a good thing considering the last round, could be a bad thing considering the rest of that last half of Parabellum as well. We'll get the 2 defensive sides. They'll be going right back to Throne Room, which is one of the 2 sites where Oxygen was able to win during that previous half.
How incredibly awkward there for Parabellum inside of that last round as well. It just really seemed like the initiation hold was not the play for them. They were able to hold onto the wall for quite some time, but I think the big piece there was the mismanagement of the Kiba barricades. You know, we have a zombie slap it onto the wall for, or rather the door for security, and add another one, but there's a huge breach in the bottom of the door frame where you can see through, and that's where Newers gets his second kill for free. He just prones right under the angle. They try and go back through the rotate, and now a zombie's dead in the middle of the rotation for sight, all because they wanted to try and leave off of that utility, which would have been really smart, but you have to cover that whole door, otherwise you're just giving an opportunity over to the other team, and they take full advantage of that. It puts Oxygen at a 5-3 advantage there for them, where they're able to just take their time, drone things out, and work their way around the site in an extremely convincing way that Parabellum are never able to try and come back from, and that is what propels us to overtime. Oxygen able to get things done when it comes to their offensive side and at least guarantee this. It'll be a 4-2 split in favor of Parabellum there, but now since we are into OT, this is where it all matters. You only need 2 rounds, as Blue was saying, in order to win things. That'll be the first one to 8 as Vertical nade deep into Armory, but as this first minute starts to dwindle away, Parabellum as well as Oxygen, not too much done just yet, but finally Gunner will step up to the plate and he hits a home run onto Vertical.
Gunner taking it out in the open, duel bit of a 50-50 versus Vert. Vert seemingly not ready for the challenge, however, so it goes by the way of Parabellum. Foxay ready to make his first move, but that'll be in the inside of control, where as you can see, I actually don't have a whole lot of control just yet, so they're going to have to drone that one out before they feel the confidence to hop right in. Thankfully, I don't think it's going to be too much of a concern to hot drop into there, as I'm pretty sure it is open for the clearing right now. Eska, as well, will fall back and actually get hit once or twice here before he makes his way successfully back into the depths of Arcade, so a little bit more damage damage going out against the Parabellum roster. Still doesn't make up, of course, for the lost player. Though XG fighting from that 4v5 deficit that has haunted them for most of their attacking rounds so far on this map.
Dream will clear out the wall, but for him, there's nobody home. And honestly, there we go. Newers, you need to do this right now. We need a grenade, because if not, these ADSs are turning back on, and this wall will indeed be sealed, because nobody else has utility to burn. Well, actually, Laxing does indeed, so he could rotate out. They have some time. Looks like they also have the Twitch drone in, but it didn't actually get a hold of the wall. They're nade in, I do believe, here to try and get something. Newers will nade yet again. Haven't had any wall presence. This grenade's going to go a little bit too deep there. Kool-Aid able to hold on to some things for some time. He's going to readjust this Electro Claw here and has a Nitro Cell prepared. It's a back and forth onslaught in between these two as another X-Kairos will go onto the wall. Newers will get rid of some of this, I believe, Azami utility that they've applied to the bottom of Dragon. Will at least get rid of part of it, but Foxy will now pick up Kool-Aid. They've made a big adjustment. They're going to go all the way over towards yellow. This is quite a strong position, but the big problem now is Parabellum have set up for this. They have a lot of cross angles they can try and utilize, and in fact, I do believe they still have a player inside of Drug. Yes, indeed they do, but Newers is going to take him down. Have one upstairs as well. Newers will get the trade yet again. Parabellum, they're a loss for words here as they're down another man. Penguin will go down. It's a 1 versus 3. Make it a 1 versus 2. Make it a 1 versus 1. Blaz, he doesn't pull the trigger. Laxing takes him down. And Oxygen get away with the OT opener.
An intense opener indeed, though, between both teams. OXG, up until that final player on Parabellum, looked like they were just going to win this on gun skill alone, but our player from Parabellum nearly clutching it out themselves, as Stokes said, taking it from the 1v3 down to the 1v1, where thankfully for the Oxygen fans at home, Laxing is consistent in knocking it down. And as well, you can see from the replay here, there's some kind of second thoughts to our last player alive on Parabellum. Looks to the other angle. Had he stayed consistent on that one, greater chance he may have been able to catch Laxing there. But all in the past here as Parabellum drop that opening round and give Oxygen 2 opportunities now to close down this match. That would be either 8-6 or 8-7.
Now, a solid discussion point for a position like this is not really about how this game is going to end, but more or less how this stage will continue to go on because of the fact that we've made it to overtime. One of these teams, whichever one will win here, it's looking like Oxygen at the current moment, but obviously Parabellum with this tack timeout could make some solid adjustments. They will indeed be taking 2 points, and the team that loses out inside of overtime will be taking 1. So fortunately for both of these teams, they're not going home empty-handed, but on the other hand, they don't exactly have the maximum amount of points that they could have got here on Theme Park. But for Parabellum, probably going to be pretty happy about what they've been able to do up against Oxygen. Like you were talking about earlier, forcing Oxygen into a situation like this is quite difficult to do. So the fact that Parabellum have already gotten so far down this road, they're going to be pretty stellar going into tomorrow. More than likely, not a single bad smile, nothing going on for them. I mean, they're just going to be walking in with their heads held high.
So we will see if Parabellum are still going to be able to bring this back and take control over a victory, or if they'll drop it still in fairly close fashion at 8-6, just not able to bring enough of that presence to bear inside of overtime to look for the victory. Still have to see how this round plays out, of course, with Parabellum back onto the attacking side. And OXG, keep in mind, still had that consistent run back on the regulation half where Oxygen were on defense, of course, able to run it 4-2, the same exact scoreline that Parabellum were able to run. So Parabellum still with a lot of mistakes to be made up for. Winning the 2 rounds that they did, at least one of them largely off of the prowess of just one player, means that this is going to be a rough ask now for the Parabellum roster to go back onto it and still be able to close out another round.
Yes, indeed, and Oxygen are going to be forcing themselves over towards initiation as well as office, so the amount of angles that they've built up, Parabellum are going to have to be aware of this. They've brought the singular hard breach yet again with the X-Kairos pellets of Habana working their way in. And honestly, this actually might be pretty strong when it comes to this situation. They've got the mute jammers down to try and hold onto these walls, but since a lot of these walls have angles around them, the ranged hard breach is really going to help them in comparison to Thermite. Obviously, the fuse timer going to make things a little complicated when it comes down to that if they do have any further denial, but obviously we can all see at home that there is none of that. No bandits, no Kaids, no nothing when it comes to electrification. Gunner will work his way up Dragon Stairs now, avoiding literally every single camera because of this help presence sensor, and you can see how he's positioning himself around the map to make it to where Oxygen don't know where he is.
Fendel's continuing to be dumped in by Parabellum. That's the second one having gone out there from Penguin. He'll wait for the other two until he gets himself deeper into the building and until his team is ready to go for the execute. But they'll need to get enough map control to reach that point in the first place here. You can see members of Oxygen are going to be spread out quite evenly across the map right now. So there's quite a few hard points that Parabellum will need to clear out before they'll have the safety to use the rest of that utility and send the rest of their player base deeper into the site. Gunnar, though, inserting himself here, using the Presence Illuminator to be able to push himself a bit further forwards into initiation. Just not going to be getting any free crosses from the Oxygen side of things. Nades do go up, but are not going to be able to make the impact here against the defenses from Oxygen. And even worse, Blast is now stuck down here because of the Toxic Babe in the way. And oh no, he'll run directly into the setup from Newer's Eska, as well as Gunnar and Eska again, though, have already made up the difference. They're thrashing the defensive setup from Oxygen, not even giving them a hope of surviving it. And Parabellum now tie us up 7-0. We're going to the final round to decide a winner out of this match.
Wow. Just wow. That's all I have. That's all I have for you right there. A perfect execution from Parabellum. Steamrolls Oxygen. As Parabellum push it to the absolute limit of Theme Park. Round 15, an infamous round in Rainbow Six Siege, meaning that you've made it all the way down to the last round of the match. One that could go either way, and whoever takes it will take the lion's share of the points for this matchup as well. It's all down to this, John. Parabellum, they're going to go to Drug and Lab to see what they can get done on this basement setup. Oxygen will be bringing a very similar lineup to what we've been seeing across the board. We'll see if they make any adjustments throughout this prep phase, though. Parabellum going to dedicate themselves, just like they did previously, with Gunnar onto the cap can to try and slow down Oxygen's clear.
Now, the one time we did see this site get played by Parabellum back in regulation, it was also won by them, but obviously Oxygen have had a lot of downtime since then to be able to play into this. We're going to have some repicks coming out as well, initially bringing a Maverick as well as a Thermite, expecting a different site more than likely to be played into here. A Sledge also swapped out instead. We're going to see the Sledge just reoriented over to Foxay. A Buck will be added for secondary soft breach onto Dream, and as well, Newers wants to try and hunt down some of this Roam game, so he's going to go to a Jack, which is an operator we have not seen this team play into yet. Vertical, as well, as you probably saw, taking some heat right at the very second of the round, first second of the round, as unfortunately he's going to become the victim of a run out there, or at least a window peek.
That might just be karma from earlier and what we saw from Vertical with some of his initial peaks. Same for Newers as well, very aggressive to the repel game of Parabellum instead of the opening minute and getting quite a few kills because of that. But fortunately enough for Oxygen, it's not going to go down the same way. Vertical's just going to get tagged up instead, so they'll still be able to manage this even man time, or man count rather. Be a drone in here for Oxygen as they begin clearing things out. On this top floor, they have one lone soul over towards the top of yellow that Foxay could try and fight with. Does have one inside of Bunk as well, so his drone should assist in getting some more info game on this top floor. They're going to try and want a pretty consistent clear here, at least on timing. Once it starts to dwindle down past a minute and 30 seconds, that's when things start to get a little risky. You really want to try and be able to get some more info game and everything else of the sort when it comes to the actual site setup around that time. So you can see Oxygen trying to push themselves forward. It's going to be a secondary hard breach piece out here from Dream, so he'll pop open Bunk, and that's going to force Kool-Aid to play around Daycare. They'll hop inside, but it's actually just going to be the Gemini clone. Fantastic info usage here for Oxygen.
Oxygen continuing to look for these kills they need to lock down victory for themselves. The first one, they may have just been able to locate. Kool-Aid, though, once again making up the difference here for his squad, but it may not be enough of a difference. He's been fended off by a sudden secondary entry from Laxing coming out the other side. Vertical did get decked in the process of this, but he's going to be revived back up. So already, Parabellum, just a few seconds into the start of the real combat here, is going to go down to 2. It's up to Blaz and Penguin, both near the site as well, to fend off the entirety of the Oxygen roster.
Oh, Blaz in a critical moment right now. This position could help out Parabellum so much, but as you can see, there's so much to be done from here as well. Impacts, at least for Blaz, so he can try and make himself some new angles, but it's going to be down to Penguin to try and hold down the site with his 3 smokes and an overwhelming force from Oxygen holding every single angle. Any misstep, and he's more than likely dead. Blaz has been read out here inside of barrels as well. Oh, it's on a knife's edge at the current moment. They have to try and get a plan, but he crosses, an ill-advised cross. It's down to the 1 versus 5. Smokes out, but they're not going to be able to stop him for too long. Has at least one of the cross in the timing. Oh, the timing. He's going to take his time. Penguin, oh my God. There's no way that this happens again. Second out. and he's going to die from the verticality. The SMG-11, that spray sometimes, it will get you, but it happens in the worst moment, John. It goes right over the top of the head of the Buck, and the Buck is so unbelievably lost, he doesn't even know where the bullets are coming from as he starts just walking towards the breaches for the main hallway, but it doesn't matter. It was a solid overwatch on that top floor. Oxygen will lock it down before the timer hits 0, and they will take this game 8-7.
So close for Penguin in the clutch after such a heroic game as well. Parabellum have nothing to be sad about, however, as they still bring a nearly wonderful performance and a victorious one at that against one of the best teams on Theme Park in the entirety of the NAL. OXG, though, do take the cake at the end of today and are going to be able to win this matchup 8-7 at the bitter end of overtime regulation. OXG, certainly an expected victory for them, but not necessarily an expected scoreline. As we just said, Parabellum impressing to a huge extent, especially on their defensive side.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be some sweat on the brow of Oxygen, as well as their fans at home at the current moment, because that was starting to build up to something like what we saw at Charlotte from Iconic. Just stand in the corner, play that trigger discipline, and see, can they potentially find me? Oh, wait. Unfortunate. Just a little bit of a miss shot there from the SMG-11. But, I mean, Oxygen with a very solid showing here on Theme Park. Parabellum, more of the same. But, folks, that's going to do it for us here for Match 3 for today. We're going to send you to a short break. We'll be back with the Analyst Desk to break this one down.
Welcome back, everybody. The Rainbow Six NAL desk. Doa, Jesse, Jacob here with you. And over in Vegas, we have a member of our winning team from Oxygen just taking down Parabellum. It's none other than the new blood Newers. Well, not as new anymore. A full stage under your belt, man. A major appearance as well. But I gotta ask, which was more stressful? That last round of that last game there, or your majors appearance at the end of the playoffs?
Honestly, that was the most stressful I've ever been in NAL. That shit was scary. My bad.
No worries. Well, you made it through. You got the win today, so that's something. And I guess in this first one, obviously this ended up being very close, but do you feel like you were able to bring some learnings from the major into this first map today?
Confidence, definitely, and just experience. Playing in front of that crowd, like, I just felt so much more into it and smooth. It was feeling good today.
Cool.
Viewers, I want to pick your brain a little bit about Theme Park. Obviously, you guys went here, and during the Charlotte Major, Armory Throne Room was the most successful bomb site through any map. You guys only managed to play it once. You were really favoring those top floor bomb sites. Is there a reason why you guys didn't seem to want to go to Armory Throne too often?
We knew they were very good at full clearing the whole map, and they used a lot of cheese ops like knock that you saw. So basically playing up there and having us split up top would just be like just rough for us in general, because they could take any part. There's a lot of openings they can take, and that's just not our go-to site, honestly. We'd rather go a niche.
So there were two people who were playing a zombie this game. It was Lax and it was you. Talk to me about the amount of impact that she has from us, the perspective of somebody who plays it a lot, because Blaz was doing it. He was essentially your counterpart on Parabellum's side. But from your POV, how crazy is it to actually have a zombie playable in pro play now?
Dude, I can cut off different doors, make sure that nobody's even there. I'll throw 2 on it. They can't even walk through it, or like 30 seconds left. I'll throw it on like arcade window or cafe door, and they can't go in. And it's just, and when I play Top Dragon too, I also throw it on cash door and on the Dragon window, so just waste another like 20 seconds, and they have to regen everything. The op is crazy. It's gonna be banned more than like Valkyria.
You might be right. That's the crazy part.
Interesting. It'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out as the stage goes on. But one more question before we let you go. Now, when we talked last stage, you were sort of kind of getting into the pro gamer life. You were sort of getting used to living in the team house. Fox, I had to put your bed sheets on for you and all that kind of stuff. So I want to update. I want a life update for Newers. Like, how are you doing as an adult? How's the adulting going now here going into stage 2?
Oh, the coaches taught me how to cook. I'm literally whipping up in the kitchen every night, like making my own bed. Dude, I'm living life. That's all I'm doing.
What was the last thing you
going
cooked?
great.
Honest question. What was the last meal you cooked yourself?
It was probably like, chicken and rice. That's it.
You're
That's
getting there.
definitely like 2 days ago.
That's
2 days ago.
That still works, man.
I'm getting there. It's not like cake or steak or nothing. Like,
Yeah, you're not opening like a
That's all I'm
Michelin
saying.
star restaurant anytime soon, but you're making it. You're making some food. That's good.
There we go.
Yeah, no pasta, no nothing like extra. I'm just sticking with the default.
Hey, that works. The default's the best thing to learn first, right? Well, congratulations on that, and congratulations on the win today, too. Looking forward to seeing your next games, and thanks for stopping by.
Thank you, sir. I'll have a good one.
You too.
God, the new crew over here exploding over him having chicken and rice for the first time. So
I love it. I love to see the development both in the game and out of game, too,
Personal growth. It's important, especially for esports players who generally just order every meal.
Yeah, no, that's honestly the fact that he's cooking for himself at all is like, it's huge. That sets
he's
him ahead of
cooking
like
for himself.
85%.
He makes the paycheck that he does, and he lives in Las Vegas, but he's still cooking for himself. Dude, bravo.
Yeah,
that is character development.
Real adult material right there. That is some maturity that we're seeing out of Newers. Yeah, exactly. There you go. Well, it was a close match as we saw. 8-7 victory for Oxygen. Parabellum, though, I mean, they really kind of hung in there. I think they showed us a new sort of look that we haven't seen before. And even though they didn't come up with the win, there was some encouraging stuff there, wasn't there?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Parabellum, this was far. We saw the predictions, right? Every single analyst and caster and coin picked Oxygen to win this, and we didn't really give Parabellum a lot of credit, but they had a fantastic map. Honestly, they managed to grab 7 rounds and push it all the way to maximum overtime. They started a little rough against Oxygen, couldn't really land too many of those attacks, but then once they swapped sides, they really got on a roll, and they really started landing some defenses. You can see the stats now here as well. And what did I say, Jacob? Every single game that Parabellum play, it's either Gunner or Blaz who tops the kills, and there's no difference today.
Which I don't mind. I felt like what we saw from Gunnar prior to this stage was aggression, but it was unwarranted. And sometimes it's taking a risk that didn't need to be taken. In spite of the loss, almost dropping a 20 bomb in your first professional game is nothing to sniff at. This is the same Gunnar, by the way, who in SCS or in NSG qualifiers would get accusations against him for how nutty his shot usually was. It's no mistake that Parabellum wanted to go with somebody who had that kind of raw mechanical skill out of the box, but it's a matter of molding it to a point where it can be used and viable situationally, which I do think with this Parabellum team, hopefully they'll be able to bring that kind of new talent into the fold and really do something with it. So Gunnar, hats off for what was a crazy performance, and the fact that we went all the way to 15 rounds honestly doesn't take anything away from how he performed. He could have had like maybe one more kill, and that could have been the difference maker based upon how round 15 went, but still, this is a really, really good game from Gunnar.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, across the board, still a respectable performance for Parabellum. I mean, they wanted to swap things up a little bit. They wanted to bring more kill pressure to the games that they played in stage 2. And like, if game 1 is any indication, they've certainly got a good start at doing that.
I think so. I mean, maybe you're a little worried about Eska going 3-13, but we're only one map in.
Yeah.
I'd give him some time. I think he'll probably be up there fragging.
Are you more worried about Eska going 3-13, or were you more worried about Vertical going like 6-11 or something like that? Which one are you more concerned about? Because both of them are heavy hitters for their squads, neither one of which really had that great of a game today.
Probably Eska, because I think that, like, you know, we saw Auction play so well at the major with Vertical still not being their biggest fragger.
That's true.
I think he was still there. I mean, we'll obviously have to watch the stage as it progresses, but yeah, I think both teams can walk away with a positive feeling from this map.
Sure enough, well, one player that had a pretty positive feeling with one round in particular was Gunnar in round 6, getting the ace, kind of showing why he was picked up. We were going to take a look at that one because that was an impressive play, both on what he was able to accomplish, but then also some concerns about what Oxygen were not able to do.
So this is a fun strat. Gunnar enters the building going in through Gong. He's playing on the Nook, and you see he walks all the way through the yellow hallway, all the way up into Lab. He's going to be able to take down the first kill of Newers and then finds the second site player of Dream right afterwards. Now this is an excellent entry, and at this point, they obviously know he's in the site, but Oxygen need to make a decision. They can either go back to that bomb site, retake it away from Gunnar, or they can continue holding where they are and stop anybody pushing from the east side. And they choose the latter of those two options. And fair, to them, they do have a really strong hold down the center of this map. And since Parabellum feed a couple of players to them, they lose Penguin, they lose Eska, Oxygen get a pretty good idea that, okay, they are trying to push from the east side. But instead of that, eventually Kool-Aid realizes, okay, we have site control. I don't need to feed my life to these players. I'm going to rotate in through Lab and get this kit down. And now Oxygen are starting to realize, you see Foxay use his C4 to create this angle inside of Lab that goes out to the 90 point of the hallway. But it's still going to be very difficult. Gunnar 2 kills on the round so far, and he's going to be able to look through these two angles that he has for him. It's going to be a retake, finds one through the angle, then goes one through the doorway, and then the third kill right back in through the angle that C4 created. Really beautiful play from Gunnar, and just that decision mid-round from Auction. Do they go back to site? Do they keep trying to hold the map? They make the decision that benefits them in the short run, but not in the long run.
We were concerned that the rest of Parabellum wouldn't be able to come back in enough time for them to worry about post-plant, and Gunnar might have been on an island by himself in sight, and there might not have been a chance for Kool-Aid to rotate back in and help, maybe even to get a plant down. Not only does that happen, which forces all of those roamers to come back in, Gunnar still gets all 5 of them as they make their rotation back. It's pretty crazy that he did that. I mean, look, we have to have rookies in the NAL start their career by having an ace. Kino did it, and that just started the trend. So what else is next?
Well, I'll tell you what's next. Round 11 is next. That's what we're going to take a look at because Oxygen tried to do something similar to what we saw Parabellum do, and it didn't quite work out like they hoped, I would imagine. So let's check out that round as well.
So Auction also get the plant down inside of Drug. They get the same kit down, but this time the post plant is held from across the map outside on a different building.
Look at where
from
he
Laxing.
is.
That is crazy.
Newers has the right idea, but he's going to get gunned down here, and Laxing unfortunately just doesn't have the angle. This is not how you play this post plant. It's much more passive, and as you can see, it just doesn't have the reach to get that disable on. Right. Ultimately, it is a game win from Auction, but that's a bomb site that I think Parabellum had their number on.
You probably don't worry about OT if Laxing just plays that a bit differently. Like the whole threat, maybe even one more point. That post plant position, I kind of wish we had, like, we saw it from Laxing's POV on the mainstream, but from that angle, it can't really convey how Lax is unable to see the kit or any head that pops up over the windowsill. So don't do what he did in ranked. If I had to suggest anything, it is stay as close to that windowsill as you can so you can actually hold the default angle to stop it.
I mean, it's funny because all of our replayers are kind of Parabellum oriented to a certain extent as far as the positives.
Yeah.
Oxygen 1, it was just a really close map, all right? We picked the most interesting plays, per se.
That's just a credit to how close Parabellum kept this game.
I think so, yeah. So round 9 had some really interesting stuff as far as how the Azami usage came through. Obviously, one of the new 2 operators coming into this one, and we're really watching her closely to see what sort of impact she can have on the map. And turns out, like Newers was saying in that post-game interview, it's a big one.
It's all about stopping these rotates where they come in. It's obviously, again, we saw Newers do this about as well as Blaz, but he can hold this top arcade spot for years. He's up here by himself. He's already used 2 keep barriers in the main hallway, and then 1 that gives him free access to rotate from top of the arcade stairs, and then he can even hold this angle looking into Cafe, which he will in a second, but he stops this round in its tracks because nobody is able to flush him out of this position, and they don't have the explosives necessary to do it. There are no frag grenades left, and Newers is dead. First kill downs Diffuser. There's going to be 1 more that comes back through Cafe, and he's about to kill him too, so that's the entire Cafe push stop, case on the ground. Now look at where he's able to rotate to. Because of all that misdirection and distraction, the way that Vertical's around this window, you can't stop Blaz. He's going to rotate wherever he needs to and might even have a fallback right into Yellow Corridor if it's not for Gunnar holding the same angle and protecting Blaz's position the entire time. And then look at where he falls back to. He goes back down the arcade stairs once he knows that his job is done, doesn't have to give himself away, and the Kiba barriers are still there, holding down top arcade, and nobody is capable of getting through it. That is how impactful Azami can get if she's not banned.
Every map, it seems like we're finding a couple of spots that end up being like Azami spots. Obviously here on Theme Park, there's that upper arcade. It also felt like over around Control and Initiation seems like a really good spot for her. And then even in that second map that we were able to watch on Bank, we saw that CEO be really, really powerful to play around when you've got that Azami. So this operator, pay attention to where she's being played in the comp games because that's where you want to bring out in ranked as well.
Yeah, and the big thing to consider there, too, is if the Azami bans start coming through, that means there's another operator that is not being banned.
Yes.
So that's going to change up the meta in its own way as well. So, we'll have to kind of digest that as we go, right? Is the Azami ban going to be worth it if you're unleashing like a Thatcher or something like that, right? We're going to find out maybe in our next map, maybe as the time goes on, we'll be still analyzing. That's what we do. This is the analyst desk. Well, I host anyway. They analyze. But you watch and keep watching because we have TSM versus Mirage coming up next. The SI champions struggling in stage 1 along with Mirage. Let's see what happens when the 2 clash here on day 1 of stage 2 of the NAL. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a few.